Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. This is Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1628 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news happening in the Strait of HORMUZ and also Iran as well. We've just seen that Iran's fired several ballistic missiles apparently at ships in the HORMUZ Strait. Also, Moscow's under a Ukrainian drone attack as we speak, along with various other regions of Russia. And also, Iranian forces just launched an attack on Saudi Arabian ports and also claimed responsibility for the attacks yesterday. And also, we have just smashed the goal literally before we went live right now. And we're now over $2,100 raised, and a huge shout out to the LSA for making that possible. But Enforcer, what say you?
And of course, the Lee Spring Army has smashed the fundraiser goal before we were even on air, hitting over $2,000 raised for none other than Razom For Ukraine, an absolutely incredible nonprofit helping out overseas in the ongoing war in Ukraine. And we have been able to hear in the midst of all that major breaking news that's been coming out from around the world, particularly from the Middle East and also Eastern Europe over the course of this day, as the Islamic Republic of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has conducted a missile attack against a merchant ship within the Strait of Hormuz attempting to pass through the Omani waterways south of the minefield just a few hours ago. According to eyewitness reports, several loud explosions of the launches of anti-ship missiles were heard from the IRGC's naval facilities near Jassarik, and only minutes later a major fireball began to form just north of Qassam, and particularly the city of Kuzmar, Oman, showing that a merchant ship has been hit, and has apparently been hit so badly that it has not been able to dispatch a distress signal. We have not been able to get a UK MTO report on the situation, but the major fire, which is continuing to burn in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, is a clear indicator that his ship has been hit beyond repair, and may at this moment be in a great deal of jeopardy, along with the lives and safety of the crew on board. At the same time, the United States of America has been hearing some anonymous reports from U.S. officials today that the President of the United States may be willing to pack up and walk walk away from this whole thing as long as the Iranians kind of just guarantee that the Strait might be reopened. We may allow Iran to nuclearize if the Strait gets reopened, according to some alleged reports that came out anonymously from U.S. officials over the course of the day. Meanwhile, while the United States is saying that the Strait may be reopened and that might just be good enough for them, the Islamic Republic of Iran has made it incredibly clear that they will not be reopening the Strait anytime soon and appear to have shot down a drone over southern Iran as well today, showing that once again the Islamic Republic of Iran is still continuing to conduct hostile actions and is still attempting to conduct the maximum amount of attritional and strategic pressure possible to be able to see that the United States submits to their demands and nothing less. The Islamic Republic of Iran also appointed a new official today, largely a leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, via the order of Mujtaba Khamenei, at least in statement. Although there are some questions as to whether Mujtaba Khamenei actually put out that statement at all. Outside of that development, we have also been able to hear reports that the Yemeni Houthis, an IRGC and Iranian-aligned ally within the region, have conducted major attacks today against the Yemeni Houthis, well, actually the Houthi government, within the port of Mocha at the Gulf of Aden and the Bab el-Mandeb. Additionally, they also took responsibility for the attacks that were conducted on Jazan last night. And so far, we have not been able to hear any official statements by Saudi Arabia to try and tag in Turkey or Pakistan, and we have also not seen Turkey or Pakistan voice any sort of public support for the Saudi Arabians, which find themselves to still be under continuous attack by the Yemeni Houthis. We have also been able to hear additional reports that the Houthis actually showed video evidence of their missiles being launched both into Saudi territory and also towards the Yemeni forces at the port of Mocha. Moving us on out of that information and on into Eastern Europe, there has been a humongous amount of developments today, starting with a British scandal within the United Kingdom, as it's now been found out that a couple of British reconnaissance drones appear to have actually had their cameras purchased within the People's Republic of China. And apparently, those cameras, at least according to allegations, apparently have been transmitting a significant amount of data when operating back to the People's Republic of China, and may have been nearby to top British military officials when they were speaking of sensitive matters of national security for the United Kingdom. It is now being considered a significant scandal and concern within the United Kingdom that this allegation and claims have come out, and it does appear that the British are considering to remove this system and largely this reconnaissance platform, best way to explain it, from the British arsenal. In the meantime, U.S. intelligence has once again put out further warnings in Eastern Europe that there does appear to be some sort of a clear escalation that will be conducted by the Russian Federation here in the near future. And this is not a repeat of prior warnings. This is actually a brand new warning that came out just in the early morning hours of today. This was also joined by a NATO statement inside of their headquarters in Brussels that NATO is planning and preparing for any eventuality where they may see the conflict with the Russian Federation is inevitable. In the midst of this all, the 5th Corps commander of the U.S. Army of Europe and Africa was removed today under unceremonious circumstances, and the United States Army's spokesperson denied to comment on any actual reason as to why the 5th Corps commander was removed at such a pertinent time, 2 months before he was supposed to be replaced in the position anyways. At the same time, the Danube River and the Rhine have continued to drop to the lowest level seen in generally modern recorded history, and the rivers have largely dried up, leading to some significant problems, as a matter of fact, for shipments of weapon systems and also material consumer goods to the state of Ukraine, which heavily relied on the Danube River. The Bulgarians have also summoned the Ukrainian ambassador today in their country to speak on the situation with the Ukrainian decoy drone explosion that happened along the Bulgarian-Romanian border. In short, the Ukrainians gave a little song and a dance and a little apology that it happened, and the whole thing was brushed aside, and the Bulgarians said that it was absolutely no big deal at all. So that situation largely happened and died within the course of about 24 hours. We've also been able to hear that the city of Moscow is now under a drone alert and an ongoing drone threat as the armed forces of Ukraine are continuing their long-range attacks into the Russian Federation. Air defense chaos is continuing to emerge within the border territories as a result of this ongoing attack, and the Ukrainians have continued to elaborate on the presence and involvement of the Korean People's Army and the ongoing war against them and their operations inside of Russia. At the same time, Ukrainian armed forces were able to hold the lines today, inflicting heavy casualties on the Russian forces and continuing their anti-maritime campaign within the Black Sea. Sea, striking a couple of other vessels today on video and picture evidence, and we also were able to see that within the area of Galenchik, what could only be described as an air defense massacre was conducted yesterday, where a major explosion was seen in the port of Galenchik was actually a Ukrainian drone or multiple drones impacting storage facilities and operational S-400 air defense batteries and destroying them on the spot. And lastly, we have information that within the area of Moldova, it appears that a drone has crossed the border and exploded inside of Moldovan territory. Currently, Moldovan authorities are investigating the incident as a possible Russian drone impact, although it's not out of the question that it could possibly be a Ukrainian one, although that would be somewhat unlikely. But with that, folks, we are going to be making sure to move into each and every single bit of this news tonight, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And of course, folks, I do have to say that we are not amiss of any major stories over the course of this night. As y'all can hear, there are quite a many of major ones that have come out just from the Middle East and Europe today, fresh off of them presses. And so we're going to be making sure to get into those right away. Moving us on down into the Middle East, we did hear that only several hours ago, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps conducted a major missile attack against a vessel that was transiting the southern Omani shipping lane. Right now, as it stands, the Strait of Hormuz is largely blockaded, and ships are not allowed to pass, according to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' authority through the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, an illegal system that has been set up by Iran to exude a unlawful control over the entirety of the Strait of Hormuz, including territorial Omani waters, which skirt along the Omani coastline on the southern side of the Strait of Hormuz. When the Strait of Hormuz was open during the interim period between the first phase and the second phase of the Iran war, we saw 3 clear shipping lanes form surrounding the minefield that was laid in the central Strait of Hormuz, which was once the international water corridor. There are 2 of them that pass through Iranian waters, one of them south of Larak Island, and another one passing directly through Qashem and Larak to make a bit of a larger bow around the area. And on the far southern end is the Omani waterway, which is used by international vessels to be able to skirt along the Omani coastline, a sequence of fairly jagged rocks, shoals, and reefs, and these vessels usually pass only a few miles off the coast to be able to skirt right around Oman and right into the Gulf of Oman, or an attempt to get into the Persian Gulf. Largely, not a lot of the attempts via the Omani waterway have ever truly been successful. Almost every single ship that has passed through that waterway has come under attack, and some of them have been able to get away with minor damage and continue to press on to their port of call, while others have taken such serious damage that the vessels have caught alight and generally been left adrift by their crews due to the serious damage and the uncontrollable nature of the fires that would rage on board these vessels when hit. Currently, the Islamic Republic of Iran is still stating, as of right now, and has been stating for about well over a week and a half at this point, that any ship passages through the Strait of Hormuz are completely forbidden. The only vessels that we can see right now on marine traffic are those that are generally operated by the Islamic Republic of Iran or are flagged out of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Larger international vessels are currently not allowed to pass through under any such circumstances, and this, of course, brings up the age-old statement that many people like to make, that the Phantom vessels, which are turning off their ADS-B transponders, are actually making the passage through, well, actually, I believe it's an AIS transponder, are actually making the passage through the strait. It's just that they're not showing up because they turned their transponders off, and that's like the simple hack, like the free money hack in America, where they can just get by the Iranian coastal defenses without being fired upon. Unfortunately, reality dictates otherwise, as the Islamic Republic of Iran has mobile anti-ship missile batteries that operate along the coastline with surface search radars that are able to find, target, and strike at commercial shipping that are attempting to pass through the area. Not just 2 hours ago, for the large part, reports started to come out from the Surik Naval Facility that there had been reports of large explosions that had come from the Surik Naval Yard within Iran. And we were able to hear that from an eyewitness report right here, reported by Shen, that there were 4 explosions in Surik in the HORMUZ province. These loud explosions, or what could generally be described instead as reports, were actually IRGC anti-ship missile systems firing from the Surik Naval Yard, or near to the area of the Surik Naval Yard, which we can see right here, towards a commercial ship that had made it somewhere around the town of Kuzmar, just a little bit off the coastline, near to the area of the northern tip of the Sultanate of Oman. From what we understand, the missiles then made impact with whatever vessel was out there in the midst of the night, and we were able to see this brief clip here, actually filmed near the Surik area, showing the fire even from the Iranian coastline. And in a moment, we'll show you the large blazes that was seen from Kuzmar itself, which is the closest town near to whatever stricken vessel this is. You see them looking into the sea for some reason. Tilt the camera up, buddy. There you go. It's something large that's burning
Oh,
out there in the
wow.
sea.
Yeah, really. It's also reflecting across the water, like for it looks like miles possibly out there in the distance too. It's kind of weird.
You know what it looks like to me? It looks like it was a vessel that may have been hit in its fuel tanks, or it may have been an oil tanker, and the fuel is now spilt across the surface of the sea, and that's what's creating this large base to this fire, possibly.
It might be because otherwise, it's like, how's that light like extending out that far? So it could be. Also, it's like the sea is like the big, great abyss. Like it's like a complete drop off of all light whatsoever. That's wild.
Man, the volley. Man, when the Iranians go out towards the coastline at night, man, they tell you, beware of the sea lagoon creature living in the void. Yar! Like it's just an arm that comes out of the deep, grabs you and drags you down into this blackness that exists out here in the strait. But moving us on over, all jokes aside, out of the Sarik area, and further west towards the town of Kuzmar, this was the video that we got from Kuzmar town, also showing us, which almost appears to be a duplicate of the other clip, of the fire that was seen directly off of the Omani coast. Weirdly enough, this actually looks like it was filmed by someone else, folks, because y'all noticed on the last one, the camera was aimed down into the water basically the whole time. This one actually has a level view. And funnily enough, folks, I think we can actually see a little bit of the ship out there. Do you see that, Matthew, right there? Like, it might be really small on your screen, but do you see right here near to this large little fire plume right there? Just to the right of that, it appears to be a white superstructure of a vessel and what might be the hull of the ship that's getting closer to that large ball of fire right there.
Yeah, I think it is. It's got to be. And also, this guy's filming from the Iranian or the Omani coast.
Actually, I must have mislocated the footage from over here near Sarik, because apparently this was filmed near Kuzmar, because if the ship is that close, I believe Sarik is about 25 miles away, so this would actually be over the horizon for them. But at Kuzmar, where the ship is actually going through the shipping lane, that would only be maybe a few miles away, maybe 3 to 4 miles away, so it'd be a lot easily seen and filmed from there, so they must be both from Kuzmar instead.
Yeah, that's pretty significant too. It's also quite wild that these ships keep trying to make their way through the Omani route that the U.S. wants these ships to take. And it's like, where's the U.S. Navy at? It's like the U.S. Navy keeps claiming that they're helping ships get out of the area. But it's like, how are they getting hit if that's the case? I would presume that there's, destroyers and probably other aircraft doing air cover in the area. So how are these missiles getting through? Because Iran fired 4 of them.
Yeah, they fired quite a large number of them, and at least one of them, if not several, hit this vessel. Also, to give you all an idea of how severe this damage is, whatever damage this vessel has sustained, it has not issued any sort of a distress signal that has been reported by the UK MTO, at least to this point. And this incident has been ongoing for hours at this point by the time we're on air. The latest report of this was about 5 hours ago at 3:10 p.m. when this video came out, and since then, we have still not seen a UK MTO report come out for this vessel, showing that whatever has happened, apparently nobody is communicating from the ship, and the ship continues to burn just off of the coastline. So I would have to say that this is quite a interesting sort of a situation for that matter. And also, to get back to the main question of the U.S. saying that the strait's basically open and we control it, how is it the case that they can claim that? And they also claim that hundreds of ships have made it through the strait over the past several months, but in reality, we've never seen a single ship turn off its AIS transponder on one side of the strait or the other and then reappear inside the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman. Out of the entire time, folks, that we've been covering this war since the 28th of February, which is about 6 entire months at this point, I have not seen a single ship turn off its AIS transponder in either the Gulf of Oman or the Persian Gulf and then magically appear in the other area, either the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman. I have not seen that once, and the United States is claiming that hundreds of ships have made the passage despite the Iranian blockade, and my question is, if those vessels did do that, why in the world is there absolutely no proof publicly as to a ship that was inside of the Persian Gulf and allegedly stuck, reappearing somewhere in a port like, say, around the Strait of Malacca or in Southeast Asia or somewhere in Europe? We haven't seen a single one of the vessels outside of the few times or the few days that vessels were allowed to pass through the strait, make it through the strait from turning off their AIS transponder and from U.S. air cover, make it to a port of call anywhere else in the world. We've never even seen them leave the strait or enter the Persian Gulf itself at this point, from what we've seen. So it largely does appear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still continuing on its blockade in full force against the United States of America, and is additionally still making tremendously large demands that the United States must adhere to the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding and must provide even more in punishment for breaking the Memorandum of Understanding to see that the Strait of Hormuz might be reopened. And while we're talking about that right now, many people are actually speaking on the poll that we have in the chat, talking about some U.S. officials and their statements. So before we get to this poll here really quickly, folks, I do want to bring y'all through these bulletins to make sure that y'all can hear the news, and if y'all haven't voted yet, hopefully this will inform your vote for you to be able to report accurately. Also, really quickly, before we continue, is that major news, Matthew, or is that more so just a news flash?
That's more like a news flash. Just a quick news flash, by the way. This has nothing to do with Iran, but we are seeing right now that apparently Crimea is under a major power strike right now, and at least 7 major power hubs inside of Crimea have apparently been struck, if not destroyed, literally right now. So that's still ongoing, and we'll be getting more news about that very shortly, but we'll bring that up after the Iran segment.
And so, moving us on out of that brief news flash and on into the statements from U.S. officials and Iranian officials throughout the day, we did get to see that there were several statements from U.S. officials and anonymous tips from U.S. officials that came out throughout the course of the day, showing the current diplomatic atmosphere or the foreign policy atmosphere that exists inside the White House. According to a statement most recently by the president stated on the Iran war this morning to Axios that we are low-keying it and plans to wait out the Iranians economically. It will work out. It always works out, the president then added. A little bit earlier on in the day, before that statement, we were also able to hear that Wall Street Journal reports from anonymous U.S. officials stated that the president would extend the ceasefire indefinitely if Iran's nuclear program stays in check and the Strait of Hormuz reopens to traffic, according to those American officials, who anonymously spoke to the Wall Street Journal. Full reopening of the Strait would also lift the U.S. blockade on Iran's ports. And the earliest statement that we got from very literally the twilight hours this morning, in the very early morning hours, is that the president had privately told senior aides, allegedly, per the Wall Street Journal, that he may be willing to walk away from the Iran war without a nuclear deal if the Iranians fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So it appears that the U.S.'s war goals have been quite literally willed down to basically nothing. We're not even attempting to achieve, at this point, at least according to the anonymous tips from U.S. officials, any of our original war goals of a regime change within Iran, a ending of nuclear weapons development, an ending of ICBM and IRBM missile developments, and also the funding of terrorist and proxy forces out of the region. We've completely dropped all of those war goals, and we're now just going with, we want the Strait reopened that we lost due to a strategic blunder at the start of the war, and if they do that, we're willing to just let them do whatever they want in the other regards with nuclear weaponry, ICBMs, and everything else. At least according to the allegations that have come out today that U.S. officials anonymously gave to the press. And with all of these statements in mind, you would think that the Islamic Republic of Iran must be getting close, folks, to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Well, they said today, the Iranians at least did, through the foreign minister Arachi, that there are no direct negotiations with the United States. And so this generally is taken as a flat-out statement that they're generally not going to be getting around at any point to reopening the Strait anytime soon. And if the U.S. is saying that there are talks with the Iranians, that might not even be the case. But with all of this in mind, folks, seeing what's going on in the Strait as of right now, a lot of people are putting in their thoughts on what is going to be unfolding here, given the U.S. position, and also what we've just seen with the attack on another ship within the Strait of Hormuz tonight. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so U.S. officials are allegedly saying that they're going to plan on low-keying it, that's what they're calling it, on Iran, and plan to wait them out economically. So do you think that's a good plan, or is that a bad plan that they currently have in motion? And 48% of the audience said it's a bad idea, and that will be horrible long-term, while 28% said it's all the U.S. can really do at this point, and 15% said it's a good idea, and maybe Iran will break very soon under this economic pressure. So I would say this sounds like a very bad idea. You really can't low-key the situation, if that's even a term to use in this case. You can't do that because right now Iran still has a leverage. So we have to kind of, I guess the alternative is high-key it, if they want to use this type of terminology. They have to actually take action to reopen the Strait because right now it's not open. So the U.S. is trying to get Iran to capitulate in the Strait, and everything else is pretty much up for grabs at this point. But Iran's clearly not going to give up the Strait of Hormuz. They're strong strongest piece of leverage is the Strait. So they're definitely not going to give it up. And we also saw literally today 4 missiles flying into the Strait and hitting one of those ships that we just saw on the video. And that just happened today amid the talks that are still taking place with U.S. officials and Iranian officials. So Iran clearly has no plans to back off. So simply waiting around and hoping Iran simply gives up, that's an awful idea, to say the least, because Iran shows no signs of giving up anytime soon. So it's basically an economic ticking time bomb. That's essentially what this is. The longer the U.S. waits, the bigger the odds are that there will be a global economic impact that could ripple across every single major economy on the planet eventually. So I'm with the 48%. I think it's a bad idea, and they should take action instead of sitting back and being passive. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, this new talk in the White House, this low key stuff, it's kind of confusing me. So I thought, folks, I would help you all out by using it in a sentence, so that we all know how this is used in modern political speak. Low key, the president's current strategy is ass. So that's generally how you would try and use that, the best way you could, at least, at this point. But I would have to say that this is a horrible idea. I would be with the 48% clearly, that waiting out the Iranians economically is an absolutely stupid idea. Because to make it clear for everybody here, the Iranians have already been in the gutter for decades. We've had significant sanctions against them for most of their existing history. So waiting them out economically isn't really going to be doing much, because while the Iranian economy isn't doing good, they've generally gotten by for decades at this point, not doing good. It's very similar in a situation to North Korea. And so saying that we're going to be waiting them out is an absolutely ridiculous concept, because it's like, what can we really do to them? Not a whole lot beyond what we've already done. We can try and cut out their oil exports by blockading the Strait and stopping any exports from Karg and other ports, but they can continue to circumvent that by just conducting ship-to-ship transfers inside of the Strait of Hormuz, which have been done intermittently, and to be able to just get a little bit of money to keep the whole country, or the government at least, on life support with the funds received from those oil sales. So there is really no way to sit there and just wait them out. And on top of that, the United States of America is dealing with a situation on our end of the strategic picture where 23% of the globe's oil that was shipped out of the Strait every day is not getting out. And with the Houthis attacking the shipping nodes on the Red Sea inside of Saudi Arabia, there could be another significant portion of that oil, about another 5%, that is not leaving the region each and every day, meaning that there is a 30% shortage or a 30% deficit in oil produced and oil purchase orders outstanding each and every day. That is such a significant shortage that's not even been seen in the course of human history. Not even the 1970s oil crisis got that close. I believe the 1970s oil crisis, if I'm not mistaken, folks, had a shortage deficit of about 7% at its absolute peak. And many of y'all who were alive back then will know what kind of damage that caused to the United States economically and everything else that went on around the world. Just 7%. We're talking in this scenario a possible 30%. This is something that we can't just sit on top of and wait for. It is literally a nuclear bomb in the economic sense, waiting to explode at any moment. There's only so many statements, folks, that the president can make that there's a deal going to be coming around and they're going to be making a deal any day to keep the prices of per barrel of oil low. But eventually, folks, that isn't going to insulate the price per barrel of oil, because the price is going to be reflective of the actual supply eventually. And if there's only a couple of million spare barrels in the world to sell every single day, and everyone's having to contend and fight just for those couple of million free barrels, that price is going to start skyrocketing to the moon in a meteoric climb at some point, because we can only hedge the numbers so far until things start to go out of control. So I would be well within the 48%. This is an absolutely stupid idea to just try and sit there and wait them out. I would say that we should get back to fighting the war, and we should get back to winning. And of course, if the president claims, which we know that the president never says anything wrong or possibly misleading, that the U.S. has an endless amount of munitions to be able to fight the war in Iran with, and that's not the problem at all. Well, why don't we just use those endless munitions against the Iranians to be able to try and eventually win the conflict, or at least reopen the Strait of Hormuz, where they don't have control over it? That seems to make the most sense to me. But apparently, folks, we just don't know what we're talking about. Apparently, waiting out the Iranians, which has clearly proven to be a winning strategy over the past 6 months, is certainly going to work at some point in the future. It just hasn't worked at all yet. But moving us on out of that bit of news with within the Strait of Hormuz. One more piece of news to get to before we roll on out of here and over to the Houthi lands is that apparently the Iranians shot down a unknown drone over southern Iran in the Strait of Hormuz near to the Bandar Abbas area. Here's that clip.
Oh wow. He got himself a little stuff he can pawn off here at the pawn shop or something, I guess. What are these, like gremlins? Like they got a hold of this?
I don't know, man. Like they chop shop that thing instantly, bro. Like this, like it's like in 100 pieces. I don't even know what drone it is.
Yeah, I don't either. And also they're picking through it like it's a pull apart.
Man, honestly, man, they're probably looking to see if they could get something and repurpose it, maybe.
Oh, he found himself some drone parts. He's really giddy.
Man, this guy said, a drone. It's like, man, calm down, blood. It's like it's not that wild. It's not that wild, really. Also, here was another picture of a piece of this drone that was sitting around in the fields that they found it in. But that was largely the whole incident. We don't know what the drone is, what type it was, where it was shot down, at what altitude. We just know that it was somewhere in the HORMUZ province near to Bandar Abbas, and that was about it. But moving us on out of all of that news within the Strait of Hormuz, we have also seen that the Yemeni Houthis have been getting pretty wild over the course of this day. They have taken credit officially for a drone attack that was conducted yesterday night on the Jazan oil facility. And according to Anadolu Agency, which reported the statement, the Yemeni Houthis did claim responsibility for this attack on the Saudi Aramco oil facility in Jazan. We actually got one video out of the smoke, or more so satellite picture, of the smoke rising from the Saudi Aramco facility, which apparently was hit with some form of an FPV drone or a Shahed one-way attack drone, according to the statements that were made by the Yemeni Houthis. This is also showing us that the Yemeni Houthis are continuing their aggressive actions against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and are also trying to knock out further oil loading ports and major ports of call within the Red Sea for the Saudi Arabians, which will continue to degrade global oil supply availability throughout the world. We also were able to see that as well, the Yemeni Houthis also announced that they were resuming strikes on Al Mocha. And if y'all are wondering, is there really a port called Mocha? Yes, there is. We're about to get down there to it. It's not really an impressive place, but it does share a name with the famous coffee drink, the Mocha. But the Houthis have resumed missile and drone attacks on Mocha hours after an earlier strike on the Red Sea port killed 7 people, according to Yemen's military, and caused severe damage to port infrastructure. Houthi spokesman Yahya Saree says the new wave targeted Saudi troop concentrations and weapons depots. Yemeni government forces say air defenses are intercepting drones and that residential areas are also being hit. Reuters imagery shows smoke rising over the city at this moment. The new strikes appear to be a separate operational wave, not simply an update to the earlier casualty report. Damage from the renewed attack is not yet clear, but of course we're still trying to get the updates ourselves. Moving us on down and into the area of Mocha, we were able to see a large amount of clips showing the fire that had ensued and the strikes that were conducted over this port facility, which is under the control of the Republic of Yemen's government, or the PLC, which it's also called, which is the Saudi-backed faction, which officially runs the Republic of Yemen at this point. But here is the first picture that we have of one of the impacts within the area of the port of Mocha. Moving us on from that picture, we also were able to see another clip here showing us the strikes within the port. This is a larger clip, actually showing several videos of the strikes. So here it is. And we see the smoke rising from a first explosion and a second explosion.
This is a very casual scene. This dude has a pair of underwear or trousers hanging over his head, and he's looking at this disaster unfolding.
Honestly, I don't know what the hell he's got on his head. Like, it looks kind of like pants, like not just underwear. It's like full on like trousers, like full pants. Look kind of interesting. I don't understand that, but we can continue to see the smoke rising from the explosions in the distance. As they continue to film, oddly enough, there is no audio, but we generally understand where these people were filming it from and what they were showing at the time, which we'll show y'all here in a second with geolocation. But moving us on from this clip, because basically the rest of it, folks, just shows the smoke and the fire coming from that port area, we can actually show y'all exactly where this was within the Republic of Yemen's control here in the port of Mocha. I know that many of y'all are probably hoping, is there a mocha coffee here? That would be quite nice. Well, not really. This is what mocha actually looks like in the present day. Not really as luxurious sounding as the mocha coffee, but one thing that I will show y'all is that the video that we just saw a moment ago was actually filmed from somewhere around right here, at least we believe, somewhere along this port area where you see a large number of these boats resting along the shore, actually hundreds of them, and they were looking across this bay and towards this area over here. You can actually see one of the storage buildings that had already been largely burned out and destroyed due to prior militant actions that have been conducted in the Yemeni civil war, and the fire looks to have been coming from somewhere in this area right here, or on the area of the oil company of the Yemen Mocha branch, which is probably actually where the real fire was coming from, considering that it was off into the left a little bit of this larger storage structure that had already been burned out from years prior. That appears to be the general area, at least that we were able to see of this strike, and we also were able to see in some other clips here, the fire at Mocha growing stronger over the next few minutes, and the thick black smoke clearly indicates that it is a major oil fire that was starting to form at that small oil facility.
That's quite significant right there.
For the Yemenis, it certainly is. Like, this is probably all the oil in the country. Moving us on from that clip, we also got one last clip also showing the fire from one last, well, more so a report, actually, a written report, that the Yemeni Houthis attack at all Mocha Red Sea ports, saying they were targeting troop concentrations and weapons depots, follows the earlier attack on Saudi Aramco's Jazan refinery today. The Yemeni Houthis actually showed us a video of them launching these missiles and drones that would end up impacting a large number of the facilities within the area. So here is the clip. Gotta get ready with that mute button, just in case. Actually, I'm going to turn that down, because it is about to be loud as hell. Snack bar! But there goes the missile. Do they have to yell that every time they launch one?
It's a ignorant tradition. Also, it's like, where the hell are they getting all these missiles? I know I've brought this up like so many times in the past, but I mean, this is a lot of missiles for the Houthi force. I mean, the Houthi forces are essentially like a ragtag group of people that go hiding in holes underground when they get attacked by, the U.S. forces or the Israelis or whoever attacks them. It's like they've got a lot of very expensive munitions they're playing with right here. That's quite interesting.
Man, that comes from none other than the great Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is basically the sponsor of every single reign of terror inside of the region. And that's no joke, folks. The IRGC goes out of its way with the significant amount of funding that they're given officially by the Iranian government, as it's an armed wing, an armed political faction of the Islamic regime. They will go to any lengths and spend any amount of money, materials, and resources necessary to make sure that ideologically aligned terrorist factions within the region are armed beyond belief. And these videos here just continue to show the extent that the IRGC will arm these sorts of militant terrorist factions throughout the entirety of the Middle East, beyond really what most people would imagine. Most people would think that the Houthis were just a whole bunch of guys with AKs and RPGs, but in reality, the IRGC has actually made them into a mini Iran, with hundreds of ballistic missiles to be called forward at any given moment if the Houthis decide to conduct major offensives. And this video just continues to show the absolute scale and the number in which they operate these missiles. Also notice, folks, that they either have some sort of a transport erector launcher or some sort of a carrying rack that these missiles are launched off of. There's another one of those racks and missiles being fired. The missiles are not incredibly large, I will say. These are not like the Karam Shahers that you would see. Now, this is actually a drone. I need to say that here really quickly before I get into the rest of it. These are actually smaller missiles. These are the very short-range ballistic missiles that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates within Iran, and I believe these things only have a maximum range of about 250 to 200 kilometers, so they're not incredibly long range, but they can hit the port of Jazan in southwestern Saudi Arabia, and they can also hit the King Khalid Air Base inside of southern Saudi Arabia as well, and also the Yemeni armed forces positions throughout the entirety of the active front in the Yemeni civil war. But moving us on from that, this last rocket firing, we can also see these drones that were launched as well. And we believe that one of these may have been the one that hit the Jazan facility overnight. Oh, and Matt, is the Khalid Air Base under attack right now?
No, it's not.
Oh.
My left ear loves this, by the way.
Man, it really is honestly vibrating my brains out of the left side of my head right now.
Man, right before they launched that, I said, "Allah Akbar," my ear just like completely got exploded.
Honestly, Allah Akbar, bro. They have to yell that to test their hearing to see if they can still hear.
They're also trying to make sure that their brains are working at least a minimal level, which is probably the best we can do.
Oh man, we got a deep one right there.
Oh, wait, bro. What was that? The rocket pod falling off, or was that like a munition falling off of it? Did you see that?
Oh, that's the rocket pod. That's the jet assisted takeoff pod.
Okay, I was wondering for a second. It looked almost like it was a munition dropping from it. I was like, that's kind of weird.
Man, they're gonna get their own guys. Aloha, Snackbar! They're gonna martyr a couple of them, just so you know, as a sacrifice during the launch. But all jokes aside, those were the clips of the launches that the Yemeni Houthis conducted. And lastly, we were able to hear that the Yemenis did resume their strikes on Al-Mocha, just to make sure to cover that once more. A lot of people are currently talking about these actions that are going on right now within western Yemen, as the Yemeni Houthis continue to conduct their reign of terror, not only against the Yemeni government and the ongoing civil war, but also against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, once again striking the Jazan oil loading port in southwestern Saudi Arabia just about 12 hours ago. And a lot of people are wondering, how should they be dealt with? Should they be dealt with lily white gloves, or should they be dealt with a hammer? Or should they be dealt with the United States or Saudi Arabia? And Matthew, what are people thinking here, and what are you thinking as well?
All right, so make no mistake that even though this is the Houthi forces in Yemen actually conducting the attack directly on Saudi Arabia, these attacks are essentially Iranian attacks. That's essentially what this is. It's being conducted by the Houthis as a proxy force on behalf of the IRGC inside the Iranian country. So how should the issue be dealt with at this point? Because clearly Iran is going after Saudi Arabia. They're hitting their oil sites, they're hitting gas facilities, and also just generally terrorizing the country as a whole. And right now, Saudi Arabia is trying to strike back inside of Yemen, but it's not really going as strong as they had hoped. So how should the issue be dealt with? And it looks like 39% of the audience said Saudi Arabia can handle this one all on their own, while 33% said the U.S. needs to strike the Houthis directly, and 22% said it would be better if we dealt with the head of the snake, which is Iran, who's actually behind these attacks when you pull back the curtain. And I would personally say I'm actually with the 22%. The proxy forces in the Middle East are clearly getting weapons from Iran. Iran clearly supplied missiles in pretty large quantities to the Houthi forces, and that's how this attack is being conducted. So if it weren't for Iran, then this would not be possible. So this issue is starting to fester, it's starting to boil over into proxy attacks, and it's starting to get worse. And even though the U.S. says they're going to wait out the Iranian escalation, I don't think that's wise, because not only is the Strait of Hormuz still closed, but also the proxy forces are now wielding the large stockpiles of missiles and drones that they got from Iran to launch terrorist attacks on the Gulf states and also Saudi Arabia and other partners in the region. So I would say if the U.S. simply wants to deal with this problem once and for all, we got to deal with it directly at the source, which is inside of Iran, and that is the Iranian regime. So I'm with the 22%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm with the 22% as well. The Islamic Republic of Iran will continue to fund these terror groups until the end of time, and to be able to destroy these terrorist groups effectively, rather than fighting and attacking them, it is more so pertinent or beneficial to actually attack and destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic regime, which operates the IRGC as their armed wing, which is funding all of these groups and supplying them throughout the region. It's basically this, folks. This is the simple answer. What makes a lot more sense when we're going up against an enemy state? To fight all of their tiny allies, or to fight the one directly that's funding and supplying all of their tiny allies that we could fight? Well, it clearly would make a lot more sense, and it would be a lot more bang for the buck to just go to war against the larger country itself that's funding all of these forces and knock them out of the picture. If we can knock out the funding that the IRGC is able to get from the Islamic regime and is then able to distribute to all of these proxy forces within the region, these problems would cease to exist, and the Middle East would most likely become a fairly stabilized place. Because once again, folks, let me remind you all of the unstable regions in the area and what kind of threats are being faced in them. In Yemen, which is an unstable region, the main destabilizer is the Houthis, which are funded directly by the Iranians. Inside of Iraq, the main destabilizing force within Iraq is the People's Mobilization Force, or the PMF. That is funded directly by the Islamic Republic of Iran and operated by Iran as an armed force within Iraq. Inside of Syria, there is ISIS. That is the only group in the entirety of the region that is not funded by Iran, and that is the only destabilizing factor outside of the Iranian funding that's keeping all these forces running in the area. The Hezbollah and Hamas, once again, both funded by the Iranians. If the Iranians lose their ability to continue to fund these terrorist forces, then these terrorist forces cannot function and operate. It takes money and weaponry, so money and material items, to be able to continue a terrorist force. And if they do not have either one of those through the IRGC, then these terrorist forces will quietly fade away and die. And while their radical ideologies may stay and those people may continue to live, they will not have any means with money or arms to be able to carry out these radical ideologies that they have, and thus stability would largely return to the region.
But here's a question that I see people in the chat saying right here, which is a very good point, which I brought this point up the other day, and I kind of got some flack for it the other day. But doesn't Saudi Arabia has a brand new defensive pact with, like, isn't it like Turkey, Pakistan? I mean, didn't they just sign that?
They did. That is true. That is true.
Where are they at? Where's Turkey? Where's Pakistan? Where's anybody? I was saying the other day, I said Pakistan isn't going to do dog crap against their buddies in Iran. They're going to sit back and not do a damn thing. And now they've added buddies like Turkey to the mix too, and nobody's doing anything.
Well, I'd have to say, in their defense, Saudi Arabia has not publicly tried to tag them in. Because much like NATO, it takes the country that's under attack to tag in everyone else for the defensive pact to actually come into force. Because there is always an option that a country in a defensive pact will not exercise its rights under a defensive pact to tag everyone else in, or even recall upon them to see if they would be tagged in, and that they're going down there and dealing with it on their own. It could be that the defensive pact was made with a understood addendum in most of their foreign ministries that it was only to be used against the Islamic Republic of Iran and the existential threat that they face, and any other threats like Israel versus Turkey, Pakistan versus India, or Saudi Arabia versus Houthi forces or proxy forces would generally be left for each of them to deal with on their own. That might also be a stipulation.
I don't know. I think you're giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt here on this. A defensive pact, I mean, it says in the pact, if they're attacked, if Saudi Arabia gets attacked, which clearly they have been, in a very big way by the Iranian forces in Yemen, which is the Houthis. I mean, they can call themselves the Houthis, but in my mind, they're Iranian forces simply operating in a different area. So, I mean, Saudi Arabia's been attacked. They've been attacked quite severely, I would say. These attacks that took place yesterday evening when we were on air on Saudi Arabia, those were significant. We've seen, fires at all different places, like the Jazan refinery. We've seen that. We've seen attacks all over. So, I mean, I don't think that defensive pact means anything. I'm still standing on what I said the other day, that it's basically meaningless. Pakistan's not going to step up. Nobody's going to step up. I'm not even really sure what the point of signing it was.
Well, I would say that maybe that could be the case, but still giving them the benefit of the doubt and, being a devil's advocate here. For a hypothetical scenario, you and me are brothers, right? So let's say you go out into the street tomorrow, and somebody comes up to you, beats you to the ground, and steals your money. And of course, I would come and help you out, but how am I supposed to come and help you out if you don't tell me that happened and you need help? Like, how am I supposed to know that you need help or that you need someone to help you handle that situation?
I probably wouldn't tell you because they wouldn't leave with the money.
Man, well, let's just say that they did. Let's just say they did, and the police wasn't an option. How am I supposed to know, as an allied nation or a brother, how am I supposed to know to come to your common defense if you're not basically sounding the call or sounding the alarm that you need people to come to your aid? How would I know?
I would hope you'd see the bruises on my face. Let's say they got the best of me or something like that. Let's say they saw the bruises on my face and they saw me battered. I would hope you'd say, "Oh, look, yeah, Matt got battered pretty bad. I'm going to go over there and fix that bastard up that tried to get his money and stuff like that." So, I mean, you can just see the damage and be like, "Hey, look, it's we have a pact here. It's a defensive agreement. Like, it might be time for somebody to step up and do something." I mean, I don't even think Pakistan or any of these other countries have even issued a real statement of any significance. Even I don't even think they've done that. So, defense is defense. I mean, attack happens. There's nobody helping to defend the country they signed the agreement with. I mean, to me, that seems like a complete dereliction of the agreement.
But then again, though, wouldn't we say that that could be said about any defensive alliance in the world right now? Even the Russians. I mean, Ukraine attacks Russia every single day. Belarus is a member of the CSTO, which is quite literally the Russian equivalent of NATO, and yet Belarus has never directly joined the conflict in any way whatsoever against the state of Ukraine. So couldn't we say that really all of Russia's allies are basically just allies on paper as well, outside of North Korea, and they don't do anything, and
No,
that alliance isn't worth the paper it's written on as well?
No, everybody around Russia's giving them help. I mean, China's giving them help. North Korea's giving help. Iran's giving help. They're very strong with helping each other, more so than the NATO alliance. But even with NATO, like for example, when we see like Poland get like hit by drones like a while back, we saw NATO forward deploy troops and they started a pretty large military exercise. They at least did something. I mean, right now this Pakistan Turkey alliance, this new defensive alliance with Saudi Arabia, they haven't done jack squat. I mean, literally nothing, which is, in my view, pretty much where it was going to be in the first place. I mean, I didn't expect Pakistan or any of these countries that call Iran brothers to actually stand up and do something. I didn't believe that for a second.
But the thing is, though, is that you're saying they're getting help from China and they're getting help from North Korea, but you listed every country that isn't a CSTO member. Which CSTO members that are a part of the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, provide direct material support to the Russians every single day or even get directly involved in the conflict? And the answer is none, much like NATO
I don't
right
even really
now.
know. I don't even really know much about the CSTO. It's so meaningless and pointless. And also, isn't that an economic alliance?
No, that's the military alliance. BRICS is an economic alliance, and then you have the agreements that the Russians and the Chinese have as bilateral agreements between those two countries, and then you have the CSTO, which is Russia's military alliance, which was a direct counter to NATO in the present day.
Uh, I mean, maybe. I mean, I
It
don't
is
know. Like
it
the
is in the name of Collective Security Treaty Organization.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. The CSTO includes Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Armenia. Armenia froze its participation. They're not even in it anymore, apparently. Belarus, I mean, Belarus provides assistance all the time to Russia. They let repeaters get set up on the border and all kinds of stuff like that. And all these other countries are generally, except for maybe possibly Kazakhstan, all the other ones are generally neutral to Russia for the most part. They're not really opposing the war or anything like that. And also, I mean, they don't really have a hand in it at all. They really can't do much of anything, regardless.
Well, don't you remember it was just 2 weeks ago that President Almaty in Kazakhstan, when Putin visited Kazakhstan and Astana, told Putin that it'd be better to end the war because it's not really going his way and he's losing it. And that was the president of a CSTO nation telling the Russians, which are supposed to be their allies militarily, to just give up because the cards are against him. And Belarus has never directly joined the war, although we know, because we've covered it many a times, that the Russians keep trying to pressure the Belarusians to join the conflict and possibly fulfill their part of the CSTO, and yet the Belarusians have never yet directly joined the conflict in any actual way. If anything, they're like in a NATO
Yeah.
position where they just provide material support to the Russians and stand on the sidelines and just watch what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the Pakistanis and Turks won't even provide even material support to Saudi Arabia. I mean, nobody's doing anything for them. They won't even issue a statement. So, I mean, they literally don't even do the minimum.
But the fact, like, I don't mean to keep like running interference and like running defense, but just to bring up like possible like counters. The
They really haven't
Turks
done anything, though. I mean, I'm not sure if there really is a counter. I mean, unless you're saying they've done something, I'm not sure really what the counter can be, really, because they have to do something to prove that they actually are, enforcing the alliance. And if there's no material like support, there's no statements or anything. I mean, there's really no counter.
but the pact was only made 2 days ago. So how is anyone supposed to do the world over in support in 2 days?
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to like they don't have to warm up to it or something. They have the stuff now. If they want to give them something, issue a statement. They can issue a statement in the next 30 minutes if they wanted to. They haven't even done that.
Well, that's true. But also in terms of material support, when, like, as an example in NATO, when 9/11 happened, it took until the next day for NATO to be able to do anything, and then it took them a couple of more days to be able to say that they were actually going to officially respond, which I believe by the time they made that announcement, it was the 13th or the 14th of August, which would be 2 to 3 days later. So how is this brand new defense pact, literally made 48 hours ago, supposed to be doing the world over in support for Saudi Arabia when it was only made 48 hours ago, and also the Saudi Arabians haven't officially tried to tag anyone in?
Yeah, with the other pact with Pakistan directly in Saudi Arabia, that hasn't been honored either, and that's existed way longer. Like, I'm sorry, but on this one, there's no way that anybody's going to convince me that Pakistan's going to actually act against their brothers in Iran. Neither is Turkey. Turkey's not going to do it either. Now, granted, Turkey's not as entangled with Iran as Pakistan is for the most part, but that's not happening. Like, I'm pretty confident about that. Nobody in the region wants to stand up to Iran, including the Gulf states. They're scared, and also on another hand, they have like this infatuation with them too. Because they all believe there's this brotherhood going on, which doesn't really exist. So I don't think this is going to happen.
Maybe so. Like it might be. I'm just trying to say. Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I would still want to give them a little bit of a chance, maybe a couple of weeks or months to see what they're going to do. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to move on up and into the area of Al Jubail, which we were able to see satellite photography of the other day. Well, actually, of yesterday and today, and it doesn't really appear that any damage has been conducted to the gas plant. So the firm satellite data, which showed a major fire in this area, is a bit of a mystery. And we also were able to hear that the Saudis did confirm that there was a fire and they were conducting firefighting efforts, but we cannot see any proof of a fire or any damage that was caused to the facility at all, leaving it a bit of a mystery as to what really happened down there in Al Jubail. We also were able to hear that the Iranians have stated today in Tehran that Mujtaba has appointed apparently a new leader. The Iranian supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, appointed Mohsen Rezai as his representative to the Supreme National Security Council, according to an official decree. So this gives Mohsen Rezai basically the powers of supreme leader on the behalf of Mujtaba Khamenei. Rezai is a veteran hardliner power broker who commanded the IRGC from 1981 to 1997, including throughout most of the Iran-Iraq War, and was appointed Khamenei's military advisor earlier this year before he was blown to smithereens. So I'd have to say, folks, this is something quite interesting to me, and I think this is kind of moving on an idea that I've had in the background, and I'm gonna present it to all of y'all here to let y'all hear my opinion on it and see if it makes any sense. I think that Mujtaba Khamenei is probably alive, but he probably is truly close to death, or he's probably all right, and the rumors of his near demise is most likely possibly inaccurate. And the Iranians are simply using him like the Emperor of Japan. If y'all don't know, before World War II broke out, in the present day, the Emperor of Japan is quite literally a figurehead and has literally no power at all. But before the Second World War, the Emperor of Japan was in a very similar situation. But the government, the shogunate, would always say that their power was derived from the emperor, and the emperor was giving ascension to everything they did, because the emperor is like God, and God must be revered, and his words are the words of God, so they must follow them. And that's how the government in Japan derived their authority, was through the symbolic power of the emperor. I feel like that's the situation that Mujtaba Khamenei has been put in to some degree, because the fact that they have put out a decree today saying that Mohsen is going to have the representative authority of the supreme leader, basically the National Security Council, is pretty much making it clear that this guy is actually running the show, and he's just having his powers derived by the authority of the supreme leader. And I think the supreme leader has taken on more of a symbolic role more than anything inside of Iran with how this is looking from this decree today. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to get to the little bit rest of the news that we have within this area before we move on and into Ukraine. As we were able to see that within Syria today, the Syrians have finally made a deal with the Russians over the Khmenin and Tardis air bases. As Syria said, it reached an agreement after 18 months of negotiations. Under the memorandum, civilian facilities will return to Syrian management, while Russian military facilities are to be converted into joint training and qualification centers. So, believe it or not, folks, the Syrians fought an endless civil war against Assad, backed by the Russians, to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, to then have their new military aligned and supported by the Russians. So quite literally, it's basically just Assad is there. It's just not Assad anymore. Damascus says the transition should be completed within 3 months. If implemented as announced, the deal would substantially recast Russia's long-standing military footprint in Syria rather than simply renew the previous basing arrangement. Moscow has not yet publicly confirmed all of the Syrian announced terms. That generally is the situation as we were able to hear it from the Syrian government and the agreement that just came out. I guess the Syrian civil war really didn't amount to much of anything. So moving us on from that and down into Israel as our last piece of news, Benjamin Netanyahu proudly said today that we know how to stand our ground even against our greatest friends when necessary. Man, talk about a great ally right there.
Honestly, though, I mean, he's got a point, though. I mean, Israel's been held back like hell, while the U.S. have been floundering and flopping like a fish over there with the Strait of Hormuz. Now, granted, the Strait of Hormuz really doesn't even affect Israel that much, like compared to everybody else. But I mean, Israel's been restrained and also admonished quite a bit when they're trying to deal with the problem. So, Israel's Israel's a strange case. Like in some instances, it's like maybe we should just let them loose on Iran and let them take care of business. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, you don't want to let them go too wild because then it might make the situation worse.
Man, honestly, I'll be honest with you. The way I took that was, we'll do whatever the hell we want, and you can shut up and deal with it on everything. And it's like, it's a good thing for countries to stand their ground in some cases, but Israel does that on everything. Like, even in the middle of the war, we were like, hey, don't blow up, like, oil depots near to civil sites that could cause a humanitarian crisis. And then they go and blow one up in the middle of Tehran and elsewhere. And it's like, that's a good thing to be able to say that you can hold your ground, but it's not a good thing when you do it on quite literally everything. That would be my 2 cents on that matter. But moving us on out of the Middle East and finally wrapping up this segment, we have a little bit of news, folks, that came out of the United States of America today. And this news has to pertain once again to missile production, as Preston Stewart was able to get the scoop from the Deputy Defense Secretary Feinberg in his direct quote, where Deputy Defense Secretary Feinberg said, "Years-long development cycles are not acceptable. We must dramatically accelerate our program schedules and expand our production capacity now." And that was to industry leaders just this week. So I gotta say, folks, that's a little interesting. Man, all these statements that keep coming out in the United States just keep making it clear that we kind of ran out of munitions. But for some reason, the president doesn't want to say that. No one else in the government wants to even say that that might be possibly true. They say that saying that the munition counts are low might be treasonous. So, a little interesting with that. But every statement that keeps officially coming out from other government officials that are actually talking about the situation are making it quite clear that the munition stockpiles are low, like we were originally anticipating here on the channel.
Oh boy, and now they're trying to start manufacturing them in the middle of a crisis. It's like I don't know what their facilities are like because we don't know like the extent of the manufacturing facilities that these companies have to manufacture Patriots and stuff in large numbers. But it's like how many facilities do we have to build to really ramp this up to a level that's acceptable where it actually keeps up with the demand? It's like, is this going to take years to like start building out these facilities, or like that's the part they're not saying. Like nobody's saying that piece of information, which is very critical. How long is it going to take to actually remedy the situation? And that's the part we don't know.
Usually, if a country is working at breakneck speeds historically, even in the modern day, if they're trying to ramp up munitions production to basically full throttle maximum amounts, it would probably take about 2 years from this point right now to be able to see that those numbers are reached. So a little late, I would say, because if we had started on this, folks, at the very beginning of the president's term in January of 2025, we would be about 75% of the way to just all-out munitions production in almost every single category. Instead of that, we're starting that right now, right when we actually need the munitions, and we've already largely run out of them. So gotta say once again, the planning on the end of the civil administration is truly impeccable, and how bad it is. I gotta say, folks, truly a crazy and unbelievable sort of a thing to just keep seeing over and over. And every single statement that keeps coming out of the government just keeps making it exorbitantly clear that they have absolutely no clue what they've been doing, and now they're trying to pick up all the pieces after they found out that they just forgot something incredibly important, which is what the U.S. is historically the best at, which is logistics and foresight and planning. But moving us on out of the United States of America, it's now time for us, folks, to make it on into Europe. And if y'all thought the scandals, folks, ended in the United States today, we got one out of Britain that's about to knock your socks off. But before we get into all of the news that we've gotten out of Europe today, I do have to say a humongous thanks to every single person who has been enjoying and watching this channel so far over the course of tonight's stream. I can't tell you the fundraiser number. Over the course of the first hour of this show, we have been able to reach a whopping $2,855 raised for Razom for Ukraine. And we hit $2,000 within literally the first, I believe, 9 minutes of the show before we even got on air. An unbelievable number. And I've got to say, thank you very much, everyone, for the applause. Thank you. I got to say that it's unbelievable to know the Lady Spring Army is continuing to raise these humongous sums of support to these nonprofits and fundraisers that we run every Sunday to be able to help out the folks that we're covering the news on each and every single day. And I've got to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to consider this channel to be the primary source of news and also continue to watch it each and every single day. And so, before we get on into our questions here, I want to make sure that we recognize the top donors that we have for the night. And so, Matthew, please take it away. What do we got here?
All right, so an absolutely wild, almost $2,900 raised. I must say, thank you. That's enough. We do appreciate that, though. But it's just tremendous to see that, almost $2,900 raised. It's very good right there. Also, that was unintentional, by the way. I didn't mean to hit that again, so I'm talking to myself. But anyway, so jumping into our top donors so far of the night. First of all, we want to give a massive shout out to whoever it was that threw in nearly a $1,000 donation near the beginning of the stream. We don't know who that was, and it did not pop up in the live chat box either. It literally just appeared on the fundraiser, and there was no credit whatsoever in the live chat over that. So whoever you are, if you want your credit, let us know. We will shout you out, but sadly we just don't know who it is. But they gave us a huge boost at the beginning of the stream on the fundraiser, so a huge shout out. Also, by the way, a huge shout out to Hal Rose, who put in a $333 support, and a huge shout out to Hal for the generosity, as well as Truck and Chef, who put in a $300, also crazy as well. Also, Charles Z07PC Verified threw in a $300 as well, along with Big Yo, and Big Yo put in a $200 right there. We also had a $125 from Tom S, as well as a $75 from Old Warrior Fella, and a $50 from Chef Danny B. And also, that appears to be all of our top donors for the night so far. So a huge shout out to all the top donors and everybody else who threw in a support, and we are very much grateful for hitting the fundraiser tonight, hitting that goal in record time. Before we even started speaking tonight, the goal was smashed, and that is almost, I think that might be close to being a record. I'm not sure though. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say a humongous shout out to everybody who supported this fundraiser tonight, both in big donations and small, because each and every single one of y'all have made this fundraiser possible tonight to be able to achieve what is generally unachievable and most of the time in the war in Ukraine these days, which is continuing weekly support in these sorts of fundraisers to help out the Ukrainian people. And I gotta say that's an entirely great and amazing thing to know. The Lee Spring Army is filled with such amazing, kind, and heartfelt people to be able to continue to support these fundraisers. Selfless as well, should I say. It came out as heartless. That's like wrong word right there.
Oh, I'm like, these heartless bastards helping the poor
these
innocent
damn
Ukrainians.
heartless people, like helping these people to have some blankets and soup. But beyond that, though, I gotta say we are entirely honored to know that each and every single one of y'all continue to support these fundraisers, and that we were able to raise such an incredible amount. And so, a tremendous thanks to all of y'all so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the question. I was trying to say, folks, selfless and heartfelt at the same time, and then it came out as heartless. Oh my god, that's a mess up right there. Like, that's a mess up and a half.
It said, we want to give out free socks to the homeless. Heartless bastards. They want to give out socks. They're heartless, these people. They should not want to spend the money on free socks. Let them freeze. That's what they said, sir. Let them freeze.
Man, I think that's the first true Bushism I've ever had on air, man. That's the equivalent of the enemy never stops thinking about ways to hurt our people, and neither do we. It's like, man, I had a terrible Bushism right there. Terribly sorry about that, everyone. But with that, it is time for us to get into some questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and also, by the way, a big shout out to James Hughes as well. I just threw in a $160 support to the fundraiser, and James Hughes brought us over the $3,000 mark right there, and a huge shout out to you, James, for that generosity. And the fundraiser is doing fantastic. We're now well over $1,000 above the goal already, so a huge shout out to everybody once again. But in the meantime, though, jumping into our first live chat question, and by the way, if you're throwing in a super chat tonight, we will save those for the last question segment, but we will probably rabbit hole in those a little bit. But our first live chat question is going to go to Chris Shire STRAIT, who said, "How long before an industrial accident from cutting corners on production?"
Well, it's hard to say because generally there probably won't be a lot of corners cut, because corners cut would still violate OSHA regulations here in the United States, and if those companies are trying to violate OSHA regulations, that could still get them in trouble, even if it's some sort of a Defense Production Act side of things. Because I don't believe that I believe you can circumvent a whole bunch of things through defense production, like environmental regulations and everything like that. But one thing you can't generally overcome is worker safety through OSHA. So if they ended up doing something like that and ended up getting people killed, they could probably end up getting sued and maybe lose their shirts. So they probably won't have major workplace accidents, but they will be trying to ramp up production as heavily as possible. That'll require them building most likely new facilities, buying more tooling to be able to produce the same amount of munitions in far larger numbers per batch, and they will most likely have to be producing whole new plants and also getting a whole bunch of new employees to be able to operate these facilities alongside all of this new equipment that they will be getting, and that will take some time. And I saw someone earlier in the chat who must be genius. They said, you say they were supposed to be planning for this a year and a half ago? That's just clueless. And I don't know if they know, but it's like the U.S. claimed that they've been preparing this war in operation for years. So I don't really think it's out of the question to say that if they were planning it for years, like they claim, that they should have gotten the munitions production up to speed for the conflict that was being planned for years. Because it's like, how the hell did they plan a conflict for years and then never plan the munitions side of things? That doesn't make any sense at all. And that's what tells me, folks, that this whole military operation was just kind of flung together at the very beginning of this year, right after the Maduro raid, and they went, wow, that went well, on to Iran, and then they immediately came up with that instantly. Also, Matthew, does the Defense Production Act override OSHA?
So the DPA, which is the Defense Production Act, which is what the president can call on to increase production using the presidential powers, executive branch powers, it can override the environmental protections. We've already seen that with the data centers. That's pretty much like a blanket override of most of those environmental protections. But also, in theory, it can override also safety as well. Because back during COVID-19, the DPA actually tried to force some of these meat plants to stay open as well. Even though there was regulations in place about COVID-19, they forced the meat plants to stay open regardless of that. So there is a theory out there that the DPA can actually allow corners to be cut when it comes to safety, but that would be something that could be contested in court possibly.
Probably so, because it's like a lot of other things, like I guess we could call them sort of abstract. Well, they're not abstract, they're direct physical effects that are felt from violating EPA regulations and whatnot, or circumventing them entirely. But the thing that I would say, folks, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense is that if the Defense Production Act was like, yes, if the company wants to send a man into a 400-degree oven to pull the shells out with absolutely no thermal coating on or anything, then they can do that and it's fine. It's like, I would say it's like that would be insane. I mean, I would have never heard of such a thing, because I don't even think they did that during the Second World War or any of the conflicts since here on the home
Are
front.
you sure? I think they
Yeah,
had people like stamping their hands on the machinery and stuff like that, like back in that time. Like it was, I mean, and back then there really wasn't much safety, really much then, especially compared to today. But during wartime, all the government has to say is we'll lift everything. That they can just simply say that. I mean, it's the government; they set the rules and they can lift them too if they really want to say it's a matter of national security. So. I mean, I don't think they would be so blatant as to let people walk into a meat grinder or something like that. But it would be stuff like, maybe they relax a couple of safety rules. Maybe somebody gets a little too close to, possibly, dying in a factory. Then they might have to like put some of those safety rules back in place. But I think they can pretty much say what they want for the most part when it comes to like a situation for national security.
well, back then they didn't have all the safety rules we have today, and they also didn't have the ability to even have the safety rules because they didn't have the tech and the safety equipment we have today. But they still had to follow them. They didn't just sit there and say, oh, like if a worker, wants to like climb on top of a B-24 Liberator, and spin in a circle at 60 rotations a minute to put a rivet in, they can do that. Like they still had to follow safety regulations to some extent, to some degree that they had back then. Well, not to some extent, to some degree, they just had to follow them, because that's a humongous labor rights thing here in the United States. Because it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to say that this worker has to show up because they're vital to the war industry, and they cannot strike and they cannot do anything else. But if the company demands that they go headlong into a meat grinder that might turn on any minute to pull a screw out of the bottom of it, then the company can do that and they're not liable for that at all, and they can't even sue the company. It's like that to me would seem a little wild. And from what I know, in the Second World War, they never got to a point just saying, oh, well, you know what, you can do whatever you want. Worker safety doesn't exist. So I would assume that that would also be the case today, because that would be insane to say, yeah, you can just completely circumvent worker safety. You can have them breathing in like straight up mustard gas every day at work, and that'll be totally fine. No problem at all. And also, I don't think that'd be smart for the company because, like, they have to put these people through a decent amount of training, like, for them to be able to do their jobs. And it's like if they're putting, say, like, even a few $1,000s into training each of them, and they're falling over dead at the workplace at high mortality rates, it's like it's going to cost them even more to replace the employees in training than it would just to keep them alive.
Yeah, okay.
I suppose, at least that's how I look at it. But beyond that, though, I hope that does address that the best I can, Chris, at least from what I know. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
So our next question here is going to go to none other, and also, by the way, real quick, a shout out to Urban Rebel, who put in a $123 donation to the fundraiser and brought us up to nearly
Hey!
almost about getting close to $3,200 raised right now. So a huge shout out to Urban Rebel for that generosity as well. And we also have another question from AF Kaplan. He said, now that our leaders essentially surrendering to Iran, how long do you think it'll be before Iran have a nuke?
Well, they're not surrendering just yet. They're considering surrendering. So we haven't surrendered just yet. We could get back to bombing them any day now and then go through this whole thing 5 more times before they actually get around to surrendering, and hopefully they wouldn't. But I would say that as far as Iran getting a nuclear weapon, I think at this point it might be a certainty. They might get one before 2030. Considering that they are already quite close to being able to produce and test a nuclear weapon, with how they've been generally getting their processes put together, at least before this war. If they're able to get those facilities back up and running, or they're not as heavily damaged as we thought some of them were, they might be able to get a nuclear weapon in the next several years, especially if they're claiming that Mujtaba, if he really is involved, or it's the IRGC Council, whichever way, really wants that nuclear weapon for national defense reasons against future U.S. attacks. They will put all of their efforts towards making one and fielding one, so that way the U.S. cannot attack them again without the Iranians being able to basically hold a Gulf state or the United States itself hostage with a nuclear weapon. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least in my opinion, AF Kaplan. And I want to say that the count's not in yet. We haven't surrendered yet. We're just very close to surrendering, and the president has absolutely no clue what the hell he's doing. But that does not mean that we're down and out of the count yet. Maybe one day he'll wake up and he'll have some sense. That is probably a little bit too much to ask, but maybe something will turn around eventually, and this won't end up as bad as it is. So I don't want to say that we have surrendered until we've legitimately surrendered and the whole thing's actually over and we've been screwed completely. So with that, I hope that gives my 2 cents the best as possible. And we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one's going to go to Terry, who said, wasn't it about a week ago or so that Pakistan issued a direct warning to the Houthis to stop their attacks on Saudi Arabia?
I don't remember seeing that myself, actually. If that was put out there somewhere, it just didn't pass over our radar for either of us to see it, because I don't remember that. Do you remember that, Matthew?
I don't remember that. I was doing a look in here to see if I could spot it real quick, if that is the case, because I didn't see it before. Let's see here. So, I'm not seeing those here. Let's see. I see on August the 8th, which is yesterday, it looks like the Pakistanis were like beating around the bush a little bit, talking about possible terror threats in the region. So I'm not seeing any official statement from Pakistan about the situation personally. I'm not seeing it.
Interesting. Yeah, because I hadn't heard about that myself either. And I was trying to look there really quickly and see if I could find it. And so, yeah, it doesn't look like there was one statement like that. If there was, it flew very low under the radar because I can't even find it myself. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for a great question there, Terry. A great question. We just can't find anything on that. So I'm going to assume for now that that might not be a legitimate warning that the Pakistanis gave. But with that, it is time for us folks to move on out of this question segment and on into the rest of the news that we have for the night, which we have quite a lot of it. We got a lot of it coming out of Europe. Let's get to it, folks. We're starting in Britain. I hate to tell y'all, folks, if you're British, you're going to start cringing because we've got a scandal like no other that has been alleged to happen today. According to some information that has come out from the Telegraph, they claim that there was a Chinese-made component in the cameras on board a K-3 Scout surveillance drone, or the surveillance drone class of the K-3 Scout used by the Royal Navy, that were discovered to be transmitting data to an IP address in China, allegedly. A defense source familiar with the matter told the Telegraph that the K-3 drones made up part of a future defense package offered by the UK to secure the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. There are also concerns that the surveillance drones have been near highly sensitive meetings between senior Special Forces staff, and that cameras remain active even when the drones were switched off. So, we're not entirely sure if this is a legitimate incident. That's allegedly, this is an incident that happened. And we have to say, folks, that we have to say allegedly because it covers our ass legally. And this is according to the Telegraph, allegedly. We have to make that incredibly clear. Matthew, put it in the chat one more time for everyone. Put it in bold, allegedly. But if this story is true, allegedly, this could be a major security issue for the UK. But once again, folks, we're not entirely sure if this is a full-blown scandal yet or not. It just seems to be something that the Telegraph has reported that allegedly happened. So moving us on out of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we have also been able to hear that down in Bulgaria, just to get us to Balkans news for the larger part right now, that the Bulgarians did summon the Ukrainian ambassador today over the drone incident that occurred near to the border, and the Bulgarians summoned the ambassador, the Ukrainian one, over the drone that exploded near the Trans-Balkan gas pipeline, and the Bulgarians said it was likely a Ukrainian Maya decoy, but sees no evidence the incursion was intentional. No casualties or infrastructure damage were reported, and so they just called up the ambassador to go, oh, by the way, it looks like a drone of yours blew up on our territory. The ambassador did a little dance in a song. He did, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. And then they said, okay, you're good to go. And it was no big deal. So this story has turned into a bunch of nothing. We were generally expecting that it would, because it didn't look like the Bulgarians were taking this badly yesterday. So whether it was a Russian drone or a Ukrainian drone, the Bulgarians are going with it was a Ukrainian decoy drone. They called up the ambassador and they basically told the Ukrainian ambassador it's no big deal and nothing will come of it at all. So moving us on out of Bulgaria and on up into Romania, we also have some more pictures, folks, to show y'all of the Danube and also Rhine River droughts that are ongoing at this point. Europe is suffering from record-breaking heat at this moment through the heat wave that's been affecting Europe and also the United States throughout the entirety of its eastern and western coasts, along with the entirety of North America over the course of the summer. And this has also affected Europe quite greatly as well. And because of this, the Rhine River and the Danube and the Po River, which hasn't been mentioned a lot, are suffering from droughts. Here's a picture of the same area of Novi Sad in Serbia here in 2020 and in 2026 to give you all an idea of the drop in water level. We also have another picture here. This one's from, let's see, this one's from Karovi in, where the hell is that? That's in Germany. Hold up, folks. Is that, I don't understand. I don't understand. What city is that? Because this is in Cyrillic, you see, folks. It says Killen, Germany. I don't understand what town that is. But anyways, outside of that, where I'm getting stuck in the weeds, folks. This is what the area looked like in 2021, and this is what it looks like in 2026 with the water level. We also were able to see this area right here. This is inside of Bulgaria, and I would assume that this is Budapest. Actually, this is Budapest, Hungary, and apparently that's Bingri. Bingri in
Bingay.
Cyrillic. Huh?
Bengay.
Yeah, something like that. This is a V, a E, an N, a G, an R, kind of like an I, and then kind of like an I-A-ish sort of thing in the Cyrillic alphabet. So apparently that is supposed to be Hungary in the Cyrillic language. I'm not sure which Cyrillic language this is, but that is Budapest clearly right there. It says Budapest quite literally. So that's the Danube inside of Hungary and Budapest at this moment, showing all the water level in 2024 and 2026 during the current heat wave. And in this last picture here, we have another picture from Germany. I'm not even going to try and guess the name of the town. It's like Dusseldorf. It's Dusseldorf. Oh man,
Holy moly! Dang, man.
I'm trying my hardest, man. I mean, do you even know what those letters are?
I don't know how to read Russian. I'm not like that.
Man, well, this be that that be that Dusseldorf, Germany, and that would be all the way over here. This is Dusseldorf, and that is the current water level in 2026. The Rhine is almost completely dried up, and that was the water level in 2024. Just to show y'all the drought that's affecting Europe at the moment. This seems like something that isn't really a part of our news coverage, folks. But the thing is that the Danube River is actually starting to see a renaissance of a sort, to where it's become incredibly important for Balkan trade and also the movement of supplies and goods. And the fact that the river has become exceptionally low means that most river-based transport has stopped, and a large amount of it makes it on into the area of the Black Sea, and some of it actually makes it on up into Ukraine. So this is actually affecting the supply lines militarily to the state of Ukraine to some extent. We're not sure how much this really is, and a lot of this might just be transported over rail as a viable alternative through Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary, and also Romania, but we're just not really sure what the supply impact of this could possibly be. Moving us on out of all of this, we've also been able to hear that in interesting development today, the 5th Corps commander has been removed from his position. Lieutenant General Charles D. Costanza, not really.
Stanza.
These pretzels are making me thirsty!
Jerry, I got a job at Penske. I got the Penske file.
Jerry, they want me to run the 5th Corps! Man, let's be on that.
He doesn't look like George.
No, he doesn't look like George. He looks quite successful, really. A 3-star general, a lieutenant general as well, so that's pretty high up there. He's literally just 1 star away from getting to the highest current rank you can get in the armed forces currently. But Lieutenant General Charles D. Costanza, the commanding general of the U.S. Army's 5th Corps, forward based out of Camp Kuzwisko in Poland and tasked with the defense of NATO's Eastern Front, has been removed from command with no official reasoning and only 2 months remaining on his tenure, according to the spokesman for the U.S. Army. We have no clue why this happened. Quite literally none. He was just removed without any comment, and that was it. Just to give you an idea. I was in the pool! I was in the pool!
Oh, geez. Real, I do feel bad for this guy, though, I have a feeling I know what happened. So, I do feel bad for him. He probably was a competent fellow, but, competence doesn't get you too far these days, apparently.
And I gotta tell y'all, folks, 5th Corps is very important. 5th Corps is quite literally really the whole fighting force that we have in Poland right now. Actually, as a matter of fact, they're basically the whole fighting force for U.S. Army Europe and Africa on the ground, because if I read my notes that I made for 5th Corps here correctly, they actually command both Atlantic Resolve Rotational Divisions and 3 brigades in Germany, which fall under their direct command. So they control the Atlantic Resolve Rotational Division in Poland, which makes up all of our fighting forces in Poland currently, that would actually move to engage the Russians, and they also control the Atlantic Resolve Rotational Division down here, which is based at Mikhail Kogalosanu Air Base. And on top of that, they also have the support units as well. I believe the 2nd Cav is a part of the 5th Corps, which it is. And there's also a couple of artillery forces and logistics brigades that are also a part and fall directly under the command of 5th Corps. Let's see here. Actually, I won't get into the extreme details there. But the removal is somewhat important because that's basically the whole ground commander that we have that would actually be in charge of commanding our fighting forces in a possible confrontation with the Russians. So why did he get removed? Was it maybe that they alleged that he did not have enough testosterone? Well, I'd say that he probably did. But was it that? Was it that they said that he was there because he was a diversity hire? Maybe. I mean, he was white, so I doubt that. But was he maybe removed because he wasn't willing to go along with quite literally every single dogmatic domestic political standpoint that's trying to be forced on the military these days? Maybe. It's hard to say.
I don't know. When they don't cite a real reason for it, that gets really suspicious really quickly. When they don't cite a reason, like just let somebody go like that. And I would assume that for him to be in that position, he probably had a decorated career, I'd imagine. He probably wasn't just like some nobody that jumped in that position. So, it seems like we have a trend here of a lot of top commanders just like mysteriously leaving their positions out of the blue and being told to leave. Seems like there's a pattern here, and I don't think the military commanders are the problem.
Was it that he finally made an offhanded comment about that stupid meeting they had at Quantico last year, where the Secretary of Defense got in front of all of them and did that goofy speech And then maybe sometime in between then and now, he said that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and that somehow got around to people in the Pentagon and he got removed. Who knows? Like, it's very hard to say, folks, but these days, you never know. And considering that there has been more generals that have been removed from their positions without any explanations in the present day, I generally would say that this is probably another extension of the ongoing silent purge that's been going on in the armed forces, unfortunately. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to get on into the larger news from U.S. intelligence that has once again thrown out another alarm today, according to U.S. officials who spoke to CBS News, that the Russian president could be increasingly willing to authorize provocations against NATO territory on the Eastern Front, including hybrid operations, cyber attacks, and possibly some sort of small-scale military operations directly against NATO, which would basically be a small ground war. So once again, they're putting out that warning. At the same time, NATO has also made a comment today that they are preparing for various scenarios where the Russian threat could emerge. So it appears that NATO is saying to some degree they're planning for a war with Russia, but we don't know how extensive that planning really would be. We've also been able to hear that within Moldova, a drone did land and explode on Moldovan territory today. Whoopsie. And they are currently investigating that inside of Moldova. They're not sure whose drone this was or what type of a design of drone it was yet, but hopefully we'll be able to hear some more information on this by tomorrow. So moving us on out of all of this news that we just got done with in Europa, a lot of people are talking about this interesting poll that is talking about this U.S. intelligence report that came out once again today, warning even further that the Russians may be getting ready to conduct some sort of concerted action directly against NATO allies here in the West. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So U.S. intel is now warning today. They're issuing even more warnings about what Putin's planning to do in the future on NATO territory in Europe. They say that Putin is now planning to launch more severe, quote-unquote, hybrid warfare on Europe. And what are your thoughts? 44% said Russia will harm civilians soon. That's probably the next move that Russia's going to make. They're going to end up crossing the line and actually hurting innocent people inside of Europe. While 30% of the audience said Russia will launch symbolic strikes, kind of like they've been doing so far. And 17% said Russia will end up attacking directly and maybe even starting a war as well. So I would have to say this, folks. This new terminology they're using called hybrid warfare, that's the same thing as saying enhanced interrogation techniques when it actually was referencing torture. That's the same type of like soft wordage they're using. It's made to tamp down the severity of the incident. Hybrid warfare is warfare. That's the root word here is warfare. So basically what they're saying is Putin is planning on waging war against Europe. He's already been waging it, but apparently he's planning on ramping it up because he realizes there's no red line that appears to be evident at this point. So he's going to see if he can push it even farther. So I think naturally, eventually, unfortunately, with all the adjectives included, I think Russia will end up harming civilians probably pretty soon. That seems to be a natural escalation, and they might end up hitting an aircraft or something like that, because we did see that FPV drone hanging around the Germany airport, and that was very close to hitting passenger aircraft. So I think NATO needs to realize that they need to be prepared for that, and they don't need to get caught off guard if something like that does happen, because unfortunately, I think we're inching closer and closer to that as Putin gets more desperate. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I would also agree. It's quite a concern, and we do need to be vigilant and prepared for such an eventuality. And we also need to start trying to get off of our ass and get towards defending against drone warfare. Well, like the Russians are trying to get ready for hybrid warfare attacks, we need to be ready for hybrid air defense, because their main spear or spearhead that we would see at this point would be with drone forces, and that means that it needs to be our top priority to prepare and defend against. And hopefully Europe is prepared. I would hope so. But moving us on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have inside of the war in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear that as of tonight, the Russian Federation's capital of Moscow has once again come under attack overnight, as we were able to hear that there was a red level UAV alarm throughout the country in the Moscow Oblast, Smolensk, Kaluga, Tver, and Penza, showing that almost every single oblast surrounding the Moscow Oblast and Moscow itself has come under a significant drone alert threat. And we do see that there is a large number of Ukrainian drones currently active and flying within the airspace, as we were able to see in these attack vectors here. Once again, it is generally another standard large-scale Ukrainian drone attack. We believe that about 300 to 400 drones were flying into the Russian Federation overnight, and it was a significant attack to say the least. Chaos ensued throughout most of the country and the near border areas, and there were significant amounts of air alarms and air defense fires that were seen in Bryansk, Voronezh, Voronezh and also the other oblasts directly along the Ukrainian border. But moving us on first into the Bryansk area, we were able to hear that there was also an additional ballistic threat that was put out in that area overnight, according to the monitoring channels that were apparently speaking of the situation within that area. Additionally, we also were able to see that within Voronezh, there was quite an interesting little situation that went on when the Russians trying to shoot down a Ukrainian drone. Let's take a look and let's see if they got it.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Oh my god!
What the hell?
Bro, everyone's missing. There's like a little bubble around the drone where everyone's not hitting.
How the hell is that even possible? Like these bullets are literally going every imaginable direction possible. It's like, how are the bullets flying in like that?
Man, I don't even know. Look at this, though.
Look at that.
Man, look, there's literally like a square box around the drone where everybody's like getting very close but just completely missing.
Yeah, really. It's like the quantum bullet. It's just like the magic bullets right here. It's like they're coming in from the sky.
You know what this reminds me of, man? This reminds me of that Disney show, like where it was like the Toad, The Adventures of Mr. Toad, and he was on that train, he went bang, bang, and then they show the cops, and there's like 30 of them, and they're all firing and missing him. Bro, that's literally this clip.
Yeah, honestly, man, it really is like this clip. This is insane.
Oh my god, he keeps going. Now the soul is hitting it.
Oh my gosh. Man, right now some innocent Russian families getting Swiss cheesed over there in the corner. Like, these bullets are going somewhere. I don't think it's hitting the drone.
Man, call them Swiss cheese because they from Vermont. Good. Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. We gotta share this clip to y'all in its entirety. I'm not gonna pause it once. We're just gonna show the entire thing in its full glory, because it is absolutely crazy, folks, to watch this happen and they don't hit it once. I've never seen anything like this. That is insane.
Ну вот, а ты говоришь, чтобы мы их сбивали, собьешь, блядь, пизда вообще.
That is nuts. Also, there's like some random banging and popping going on in the background. There's something exploding in the midst of this gunfire off in the distance.
Oh no, those are the guns. Those are some of the air defense guns. Some of them are like high rate of fire. I don't know what they are, but it might be those little mini guns. The the 12.7s they put on the trucks. It could be some of those.
It could be, possibly. What a insane scene here.
Man, absolutely crazy. But moving us on from that and on up towards the Voronezh area, we were able to see that new fuel lines are forming in Voronezh and also other oblasts near to the border area, because once again, the fuel has largely run out. We can also see that one anonymous Twitter user actually put in their new nomination for the 100 Russian ruble note.
Yes.
Throwing
that's
hands.
Actually quite nice. Honestly, I love this. I'm very much in favor of it. Also, they have some birds flying in too. They had to make those drones instead of birds. Yeah, honestly, I'm in favor of this note.
Man, honestly, man, let's like, what is this? A historic event or a scene evoking cultural overtures? Like, what would this be called in Russia?
Mad dude right there on the right's getting his shit kicked in. Like, this dude over here is massive. He's not winning this fight.
Man, and this guy right here, man, is truly a Gopnik. Wearing the 3-striped Adidas tracksuit, he's got it down, bro. He's got this thing on lock. This guy doesn't stand a chance. But what a crazy, what a crazy design. Honestly, it's baller. Also, by the way, another thing to add in for everyone here is that the North Koreans are still getting their airtime by President Zelensky. But Zelensky has now stated that Russia is preparing to receive between 30 and 50,000 additional North Korean troops, raising Kyiv's previous estimate of 30,000. So it now looks like the Ukrainians are saying that there's a lot more of them that should be arriving inside of Russia. And something that's interesting about this, folks, is that the Ukrainians are running with such a wide range of numbers because absolutely none of these North Koreans are being put on the front lines. After the Battle of Kursk, apparently the North Koreans have realized that their infantry would literally get mowed down to the point that they would be losing a lot more fighting troops than they would be gaining knowledge on. So all of these forces apparently are in rear line support positions. So they're operating ballistic missile launchers, or they're conducting field logistics or field fortifications. It's stuff that does not involve them picking up a gun and charging at Ukrainian forces, which I'd honestly have to say, while the North Koreans are quite behind the times and backwards, it does look like, in a way, that they do know enough to at least understand not to put all of their guys into a meat grinder that is even worse than the Russian meat grinder. And also, they put out a little clip. Man, they put out those beats by Dr. Dre. We got another banger, man, from the propaganda and agitation department in North Korea, where they showed the North Koreans in Russia.
Let's see it.
Man. Oh, they got that music. Bro, they got their own music.
Look at this hell.
Man, I bet you they made this look cool as hell. Oh, look, this is actually of their battle in Kursk. Also, the lyrics are from a song called To Serve Russia. But we can see them doing their whole little propaganda thing. Man, they had the whole propaganda deal going on, man, in Kursk. Oh, look, man, it's that they reused one of them, Matthew. Remember the guy almost getting his shit blown in by the grenade that literally only went 3 feet down the hall?
Yeah. Oh man, that was real tough right there. That went hard.
Man, it really did. You see them firing their little Nebelwerfer. Oh, man. And then just showing FPV footage. And now showing scenes of Pyongyang, because everybody in North Korea knows Pyongyang, right?
Nothing says North Korean patriotism like fighting for a foreign country.
Man, it's profound. Man, they always love to whip out these stupid maps and notebooks. Like, they do that every single time. They have to have that. Now they're all sitting down, looking kind of sad, actually.
They're like, look, we have paper with printouts. It's like they're so behind the times. Like, most people are using like displays, iPads, and like like internet connected devices like called computers. These days, they're not really using like old school stuff.
In America, they use expensive Dell computers to come up with their war plans. Here in North Korea, we use something simpler, the map. Man, that's like, man, wow, advanced.
One thing you'll never accuse North Korea of is being hacked and their war plans leaking. They can't leak unless you physically take the paper with you.
Man, honestly, man. Also, look at this, man. We got Al Capricorni up here, man. Bro, he's that fine Italian meat with that fedora.
Man, he's dripped out. The only problem is here he's a little bit on the heavy side. I don't think Al Capone was ever this chunk.
Man, back in the day, man, they called Al Capone little snorky or something like that. They call this blood little porky.
They call him Mr. Porky Pig.
Man, this blood be up there going, that's Al, folks. Man, and then see them showing off the nighttime parade from a while ago. Basically just a new edit. Man, about the only thing they kind of do.
North Koreans, they love to see like expensive fireworks shows like this in Pyongyang while they're like eating like bits of cream of wheat and stuff out of the like garbage. It's like they're spending all their money on these displays and these propaganda films nobody can even eat.
Man, they love to eat that what the hell they call it, like the soybean meat substitute over there, like the street food and stuff. Man, they love the soybean meat substitute and watching this stuff. It's great. Man, wow. None of them even saluted properly. Did you notice that? Like, all of them saluted a different way. But anyways, that's the end of their little clip that they put out today. Brand new edit. Generally using a lot of the same footage, though, actually. But they put in a couple of new clips that we had never seen before. But moving us on out of that whole deal inside of Voronezh from the Norks, it's now time for us to move on down and into the Black Sea. Because as everybody knows, the Black Sea is where the business is at these days. And up in the Sea of Azov, the Ukrainians have largely started to state their strategic objective, as the deputy commander of the 414th Brigade, has stated that their number one objective is to stop Russia's maritime logistics. And a direct quote added was, "We don't need to sink every tanker and bulk carrier carrying products or other cargo in the Sea of Azov. Our goal is to block transshipment. We know where to strike, and we strike precisely." So they are going for direct targets and attempting to break apart Russia's supply lines and logistic chains through the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea as their direct objective. We also were able to confirm that an important military depot, the 133rd Logistics Brigade, was also hit and destroyed on firms, as we were able to confirm, by Ukrainian attacks last night. We do not have video and picture evidence, but with the firm satellite data showing a major fire here, we largely can confirm that this garrison or logistics garrison had been destroyed overnight. And over in the Galinchik area, we got crazy news. We're talking about crazy news. Y'all remember this explosion from yesterday? And we'll mute that. But y'all remember that explosion from yesterday?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So we know what it blew up. And let me show y'all what it blew up today. So these are the burn damages that we were able to see, and they were able to get an S-400 launcher, but they also were able to trace the fire of the S-400 and were able to destroy the Russian Federation coastal patrol ship, the Izumrud, inside of the harbor. So they were able to knock out quite a significant bit. We believe most of the explosion from yesterday, though, came from the transport erector launcher of the S-400, and that's what created the large white plume of smoke or the explosion that we saw from across the bay just yesterday. We also were able to see that within the area of the M4 highway, the fuel lines have continued to grow because the fuel shortage has not gotten any better. It only gets worse. There's the start. And now let's see how long this goes.
Oh, yes, a return to the times of Stalin. We love the return of the times of Stalin because this is when the economic troubles and woes came around. The Russia's no stranger to this right here. They love queuing up.
Man, there is nothing more Soviet than waiting in a line. The Soviet Union made
Also, by the way, real quick, I want to give a huge shout out. I finally found out who the viewer was that put in the $1,000 donation, or roughly about $1,000 donation to the fundraiser earlier. He had to message me on Patreon. I don't know why it didn't show up in the live chat, by the way. We were desperately looking for that earlier, and for whatever reason, it just didn't pop up. But a huge shout out to Tyler from Everett, Washington, by the way. He was the one that put in that massive 1,000 roughly support to the fundraiser. So a massive shout out to Tyler from Everett, because we were looking earlier and we were like, where'd this $1,000 come from that had started the fundraiser off? And apparently it was him that threw it in.
Man, I gotta say, a humongous shout out to you. All the way up there in Everett, Washington. Everett, Washington is a pretty cool place, actually. It's right over here. Right over, well, hang on. It's right up here. Right here near the Boeing factory, which is right down here, if I'm not mistaken. You live up there near the Boeing factory. Huge shout out to you for that $1,000 donation to the fundraiser, because that's made up, I believe, a third of the total of the fundraiser that's been raised so far tonight. That is absolutely incredible. So, humongous shout out to Tyler from Everett, Washington, once again for that unbelievable support to the fundraiser. And so sorry that we have not been able to give you your credit yet over the show, because oddly enough, we both were looking for that and seeing where did the 1,000 come in, and for some reason the YouTube live chat never showed it. But we do greatly appreciate you for your humongous donation to the fundraiser, as it is definitely helping out people over in Ukraine. And so with that, it is time for us to move on out of the Russian Federation and the rear line areas, and it's now time for us folks to finally move on and into the war in Ukraine. And some statements from the Ukrainian government to start off with, we were able to hear that President Zelensky stated that the war will be felt more at home by the Russians here in the near future than it has ever been felt before. He also stated that the upcoming winter will be extremely difficult, as most of Ukrainian power plants have been damaged already in strikes that have been conducted throughout the spring and the summer by the Russian Federation. This is nothing entirely new. Usually Ukraine's energy infrastructure struggles throughout the winter, as the Russians have been attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure since the very first months of the war and have never let up, meaning that usually whenever a winter comes around, there is a major energy crisis that is ongoing inside of the state of Ukraine. Moving us on from that, we were able to see some of the Ukrainian air defenses at work overnight in the Western Air Command. The Western Air Command generally is around the area of Lviv, but just to make sure that we included it in our Kyiv coverage, I put it here on the map, kind of in the Chernihiv area. But we can see here the Ukrainian air defense operators in the Skynex system operating that Skynex turret.
Look at that thing is impressive. I will say that's like the Lamborghini of the battlefield guns these days. I will say that's a very fancy system.
Man, it is so cool. These things are the neatest. There it is firing.
I like how fast the turret. The turret's response time is insane. Like how fast that turret can move, and that's a hell of a lot of weight that's moving around. Look at how look at that. That's impressive.
Man, that is wild, and it's literally tracking the KH-101 to the ground.
Who makes this thing?
I believe Rheinmetall does.
Yeah, they make some good stuff. I don't think the U.S. uses their stuff for the most part, but that's pretty impressive.
Let's see here. Skynex air defense system. It is made by Rheinmetall. Yeah, so it is made by Rheinmetall. Rheinmetall is a really cool company. You know what? You know all the stuff that Rheinmetall makes?
They make a little bit of everything. They're like the General Dynamics of the United States.
Yeah, they kind of are. Like they really kind of are. It's a really cool company. But let me see if I can show y'all some of the stuff they make. Let's see. We don't. Oh, they were involved in making some stuff in the Second World War, but we'll just skip over that. Every company in Germany did that. You know, it's just kind of the thing. It's okay though. It's all right though. It's fine. Everyone's fine. But moving on from that and in the modern day, they do some really cool stuff. Like they make this really cool Archer gun system for Germany, which uses the Swedish turret on a German design. Really cool, eh?
That is pretty cool.
And they also make let's see here. Dang, bro, their stock price kind of just went to the moon, honestly. Like damn. And
I
so
wonder why.
I wonder why. I really do. But they also make the very famous and well-known Leopard 2 main battle tank, which many of you all will know. That's one of their biggest creations is the Leopard 2. I believe Kraus Maffei Wegman KMW is also involved heavily in the production of the Leopard 2s as well. But still, Rheinmetall is a really cool company. But also, it appears that we're having breaking news. Man, what do we got here?
So I just saw a video here. I'm not sure if we have this video queued up right now or not, but I see a video here apparently showing a daytime attack on Russia's Nizhnekamsk oil refinery, apparently just about 40 minutes ago. It looks like we see a drone flying straight into it. And also we got some footage as well out of Donetsk of some of the power substations getting taken out. And also it looks like Tatarstan is also under attack as well.
Dang, this is all new, Matthew. We don't have this. This just started to happen right now. Here is a hit, folks, on the Nizhnekamsk refinery. Go, little fella, go. And we have another clip here?
Yes.
Oh, Tatarstan. Let's take a look, folks. Tatarstan here.
So that's apparently one of the drones that hit the oil refinery in Nizhnekamsk because it says Tatarstan was the headline for that clip right there. So apparently that was its way making its way over toward the Nizhnekamsk area. Also, apparently Nizhnekamsk, the refinery, is apparently a medium-sized refinery. It looks like it processes about 8.5 million tons of crude annually with some of their processing units there. So it's not the largest, but it's definitely a big one.
Interesting. Also, yes, this is a Tatarstan Oblast because Kazan is the seat of the Tatarstan Oblast. So this definitely is Tatarstan. And so the drone apparently was flying over the Chameleon River to Nizhnekamsk, and then they went and hit the refinery. So we got basically the whole thing from start to finish. Let's watch this clip. Meow. We also saw in this next clip the drone one more time. And lastly,
That's a good one.
oh, that actually is. You were correct. So moving us on from all those clips, it looks like there was an attack on the refinery within Nizhnekamsk. But moving us on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have from the front lines down in Ukraine, it's time for us to move on out of the air defense clip and on into our location unknowns, where we were able to see this cool picture of a Ukrainian Su-27 sitting under the pale moonlight. And it is really something. Look at that little fella.
That is something right there. Look at that thing. It's ready to get it on or
It's
get
carrying
it or whatever.
It's carrying AGM-88 HORMUZ. Really something right there. Really something. We also were able to see, and moving us on from that and into our next clip, that there was a nice little Spartan hedgehog that was operating in the front line today.
Oh, look at that thing. Look at that. Look at it.
Man, whatever that was coming up
These things
behind
are
it was going like fast as hell, honestly.
They got this thing bouncing around like a little toy out here. Like, it jumped around that corner like a little playful little thing.
Man, look at hello, hello. Man, like,
A whimsical looking war vehicle. Whimsical.
like, these things actually do look kind of a little like funny. Let's see, Spartan AF. Let's see, APC. Let me put that in. So this is what it actually looks like without the cage.
That is a little whimsical vehicle, actually. The cage really made it look more menacing than it truly was.
Man, the British be out there. We'd be going out there, man, saying, make the box. And we build the M113, which was our version of the APC in the Cold War. It's literally just a box. Man, Britain was out there going, make it look all cute and fun. And then man, when you turn on the engine, man, you don't hear like a little engine roll. You just hear it go, hello there, hello. Man, it just goes riding around everywhere. Honestly, it's a very cute looking little APC.
It is really.
It is rather cute, rather cute. I would say it has style points over the M113. But moving us on from that clip and on into our next one, we also were able to see a little drone attack on the Russian troops. Oh, the drone, eh? Well, where'd the audio go? Oh, here it comes. Right over top. He's kind of moving.
Шустрый, съебался?
He's going to act like he didn't see it.
Man, he said, over there. Oh!
No, it's back.
No!
Oh my God!
Живой?
I'll put Bro said alive. Oh yeah, he's definitely he's good. He's fine.
Bro, he said, alive? Bro, that guy went, oh! Really? It's like, I don't think so. I thought, he is, but like he's hobbling. It's like, man, bro, honestly, I don't know what it is, man, but that almost seemed like something straight out of a movie, like some sort of a comedy routine. Like he said, where? Bro, he literally saw a flyover. He said, where? They said, over there. And then they came diving right in.
Bro came jumping out of there like he stepped on a Lego and came out like smoking. You know, like in the cartoons, they're like, no, Slowpoke Rodriguez, he pack a gun. And then he like blasted like the cat or something like that. And then the cat's all smoky and charred up. And dude ran out of that fire like the cat.
Honestly, let's watch it again.
Живой?
That dude right there, he'll be back on the front in no time. He'll be back out here in like a couple of days. Just he'll walk that one off.
Man, true. Man, honestly.
Живой?
Is this clean? Is this clean?
Oh no, I have to actually end it right there. Man, you started asking the question while I was like, all right, everyone, we're going to end it there. But moving us on from that clip and on into the location unknowns, we also were able to see the chemistry report for the day. And while it wasn't a humongous day, they did get one Bobcat skid steer. Hey!
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. That's good. I like that.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And according to Miss Nisa, keeper of the records, while I just ignore this poll real nicely. I'm just kidding, by the way, folks. We're getting to it right after this. But the Russian losses to August 9th, day 1,628, show a slower pace than the June to July period, as 1,130 personnel were lost to tanks, 4 APCs, 41 artillery pieces, 4 MLRSs, 1,642 drones, 9 ground robotic complexes, 358 supply trucks, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. Overall, not the biggest day that we've seen recently, but it is still quite a good day, to say the least. So moving us on out of all of that location unknown news, it's now time for us to ignore the poll and move straight to Belgrade. But before we do that, we actually do have to get to the poll. So, Matthew, what do we got here on this poll, and what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it sounds like the Ukrainians are now saying and vowing to make the Russians have the war feel more at home. Actually, make them feel like the war at home. Actually, that's a better way to say it. They're not trying to make the war cozy at home and like by the fireplace. They're trying to make the Russians feel the war at home. That's what they're doing as Putin is escalating attacks on Kyiv. So is it a good move? And 74% of the audience said yes, fight Russia on their level. That's what 74% of the people said. 12% said no, Ukraine must not get too crazy and carried away, or otherwise they end up becoming like Russia. And 8% said I can see both sides of this. And this, in my personal opinion, is a bit of a nuanced question, to say the least. I'm actually with the 8%. I can see both sides of it because, on one hand, it's very sketchy to fight Russia on their level because Russia generally commits war crimes 24/7. So if Ukraine starts doing that, I mean, at that point, it's gotten to the level where no side's really operating, like, I guess, above board to a large degree. But at the same time, though, Putin has taken this war to such a level by attacking civilians in Kyiv like so constantly with these missile attacks and also devastating the capital city of Ukraine, that if Ukraine fails to start escalating the war, then they might find themselves getting hammered throughout the winter and civilians dying in mass, and then Russia is really not feeling the pain for it. So I would argue that Putin's actions are essentially forcing Ukraine to start fighting on Russia's level. But like I said, though, Ukraine can't go too crazy because if they start committing war crimes, that starts becoming very hard to justify, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm with the 74%, but to a degree. The Ukrainians shouldn't go out of their way to indiscriminately attack and kill Russian civilians like the Russians do to Ukraine. That would be barbaric. But if the Ukrainians want to knock out Russian power plants and critical infrastructure along those lines to be able to conduct reciprocal attacks to the ones that Zelensky is generally talking about, and also attacks within city areas on military targets that may invoke some form of collateral losses as a result, then generally I would say that those attacks would probably be easily justifiable and really no one could really look at them and go, oh, that's wrong, because I'm all for folks fighting a war as nobly and reasonably as possible. But to give you an example, I would say probably of the golden age of U.S. Warfare, at least from the Second World War, when the SS executed all of those U.S. prisoners at Malmedy and killed about 130 American soldiers that had surrendered and were supposed to be provided protections under the Geneva Convention. The order was given from Eisenhower down that if any SS soldiers were captured throughout the rest of the war, they were to be executed on the spot. They weren't to be processed or anything. And generally, when it comes to fighting a war, you follow the rules of war as long as the other side's following them, and in each instance. But once they start breaking a consideration in the Geneva Convention, like hitting every power plant in Ukraine, then Ukraine has 100% a strategic justification at that point to hit every single power plant in Russia if they so desired. So I would be with the 74% in that regard. Not saying that just because Russia violates the rules of war and conducts war crimes that the Ukrainians can do everything and get away with it, but if they're still operating in a strategic parameter and they're trying to strike and destroy Russian industry or Russian infrastructure that could be reciprocal or hit reciprocally, that the Russians are already hitting in Ukraine, then I would say that is justifiable. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, I saw someone say, damn. And I think I was saying that about the Malmedy massacre. The Malmedy massacre, by the way, folks, is a very under-talked about part of the Battle of the Bulge. But during the Battle of the Bulge, there was a group of U.S. soldiers, there's about 132 of them, if I'm not mistaken, that ended up getting overrun, and because they were encircled, they surrendered to the Waffen-SS, which, much like the IRGC, the Waffen-SS was actually not a part of the German military. It was actually a political branch of the Nazi Party that was heavily militarized. And because of the fanaticism of the Waffen-SS, they decided to execute all 132 of those soldiers within hours of being captured. So they gathered them all up in one group in a field, and they mowed them down with MG-42s and killed them all right there in the spot. When the Allies eventually recovered the situation in the battle and pushed the Germans back over the course of about the next week and a half, they actually came upon the site of the frozen bodies of all of the men who had been killed in the massacre. That was heavily circulated throughout the U.S. Army because it was considered a point of serious outrage, because up until that point, generally, prisoners of war had been taken to high regard on both sides of the war and would be received, processed properly, and sent to a POW camp. And this was one of the first times that had ever been conducted with malice, and specifically by the SS. And that's why the order went down from Eisenhower that any SS soldiers that were captured were to be executed and not to be processed as prisoners of war. But anyways, moving us on from that, and that brief little history snippet from the Battle of the Bulge, it is time for us to move on into Belgorod, as we actually were able to see a brief clip here of the air defenses over Belgorod, Belgorod. So here's the clip. Here comes the drum, bleed.
Oh, well, it looked like it definitely hit, definitely struck.
The Russians shot it down over the city, and they actually landed in a neighborhood. Not good, really. We hear some more air defense fire.
Ебать. Ёпта. Ой, блядь.
Oh, блядь, it's a trouble.
Opa!
Interesting.
Oh.
Bro just looked out the window and leaned over and looked at the ground. I don't know what he was thinking.
Man, he looked down and said, the FSB could toss me out this one day. And then he went and actually looked at the situation.
Oh man, he's like, there's the ground down there at the bottom.
He sat there and thought, if I speak out of line, that'll be me. But anyways, oh man. But moving us on from that clip and out of the Belgrade area, and moving us on down and into the front lines themselves, we were able to see that within the Kupiansk area, the Ukrainian armed forces were continuing their strikes as part of the Combined Rifle Brigade, a unit we very rarely ever heard about. I see a lot of people in the chat saying things like, you have to be brutal to win a war. Nice guys don't win wars. Well, I mean, yeah, nice guys do win wars. Like, it's like, like the Allies won the Second World War. We were the good guys.
I don't think people understand. It's like the reason why they're fighting the war in the first place is because it's supposedly they're fighting for the better good of the people. I mean, Ukraine's a democracy. It's a country that promotes freedom, and it's not run by a brutal dictator like Vladimir Putin. So if both sides start operating like animals, and like the Russians have been doing, then what is Ukraine fighting for at that point? I mean, what are they fighting to have the same mentality that Russia has at that point? Russia might as well take them over at that point, and they're fighting to be different.
Also, on top of that, it's kind of suggesting you have to be an absolute brutal, a reprehensible savage to win a war. And almost every single American war, and quite literally every single American war to think of, I can't really think of one where the United States was more brutal or more savage than the enemy and ended up losing. I mean, even in Vietnam, which many people talk about as a gray area in U.S. morality militarily, is there was atrocities like the Pink Village or the My Lai massacre and such things as that. Even still, we treated the locals better than the PAVN or any of the other forces of the North Vietnamese army did. So we were still fighting the war more civilized than the enemy was. We did end up losing that one, but if you look at other wars like the Gulf War against Iraq or the 2003 invasion, those both went quite well for the United States, and we didn't even have to get close to being as brutal or savage as the Iraqis were. We won the Second World War against the Imperial Japanese and the Nazi Germans, which I would say really at that time, I mean, those are the two most vile or reprehensible enemies we could imagine to fight, and we fought that war as nobly as we could. I mean, there are U.S. atrocities or war crimes that were conducted through the war, but if you stack those up against our adversaries, they pale in comparison to things like the Japanese capture of the city of Nanjing inside of China, or Unit 731, or the treatment of American prisoners of war in Japanese occupied territories, or the treatment of civilians at large for most occupied or colonized territories like the Koreas. Nowhere close. The U.S. got nowhere close to conducting a genocide like the Germans did with the Holocaust. So I would say I don't really think that stands to scrutiny to say that you have to be absolutely brutal and savage to win a war, because the United States has fought almost every war in a more honorable and noble way than our adversaries ever did, and we usually, if not always, have come out on top on almost all of our conflicts that we've been in. So I would honestly say that fighting a war in a noble and just way does a lot more to be able to win the war, because that makes the civilians of the enemy country go, well, hell, they're actually nicer than our own government. Why in the world should we be scared of them? If they end up occupying us or taking us over, it's not like anything bad's going to happen. It might even be better for us. Instead of putting them in the mindset of, if they invade us, they're going to start killing and pillaging everyone. So we need to fight to the death and really, fight this thing till the very end. I would say that it's a much better thing to be more civilized than less. But moving us on from that and into the Yanakaeva area, we also did get to see drones operating over this area, which the Russians did try to shoot down and, of course, failed to. They never seem to get that whole gunnery thing down all too well. The Ukrainians also hit a large distribution facility or some sort of a mall within the Makivka area, which we were able to see here. And we also were able to see in another clip here, another angle of the fire. We also were able to see in this last clip here another angle of the fire.
Да тут все.
Жарко, блин.
Все, ее вообще нету.
And another one. It's not looking good out there in Makivka. We also got to see the city of Donetsk also simultaneously came under attack, but really, if we're being honest, Donetsk and Makivka are basically just one large metropolis.
As you can hear, the dogs of war are barking away in the background.
Bah, bah. Man, it's probably just like a small corgi or something. Man, it's just out there. Bah, bah. But moving us on into the Pokrovsk area, we also get to see the 44th Brigade destroying a Russian tank. Let's take a gander. There it is. It appears that they designated it as a T-72B3. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but we will see once the drone gets close. And sadly, they're not showing us when the drones get close, but the tank does look to be catching on fire at this point. I wish I could tell you what kind of tank that is. They say it's a T-72B3. I'm just going to take that for what it is. Man, they keep hitting this thing, too. What is this, the 7th hit?
They're taking it out real nice.
And there's the burning remains of the tank blade. And that's the end of the clip. Moving us on from that one and on into our next one, further on down the way, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting a little buhanka. Oh, they got that music.
What the hell? What the hell kind of music was that? The horror music of the ghost town? Whoa, look at that. Look at that bits and bobs and pieces coming off of it. The thing's falling apart like a jalopy.
Oh, get a grip, man. You're coming apart. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Captain, I can't hold it together no more, Captain.
Hold it together, Scotty. And then it turns out in the next generation, they made it canon that he was basically just like conning the captain every single time he said that. He said, yeah, the ship can really go warp 9, but you give it a warp 8.5 and say you're giving it all she's got. So when you give it a little extra, they think you're a miracle worker. Man, it's like, bro, you're just full of shit. It's like, man, it's like that little character shtick was being full of shit. But anyways, moving on from that and down into the M14 highway area, we did get to see a couple of mobile fire groups getting hit over the day down here by Ukrainian medium-range attack drones. Man, they're mobile in that fire now, ain't they? Ooh!
Man, the Russians said, we stand on business 10 toes down, but they didn't mean like they were running when they were saying that.
Man, they said they running on that business. Like, man, like real. Also, here was another Russian vehicle that got blasted by a medium-range drone. Oh my god!
Oh, wow. A little nuke.
Fuel tank rupture. These things happen from time to time. Moving us on out of these clips, it's now time for us to move on and down towards the highway leading to the Chonhar Gap.
Ебали машину вот прям перед нами
Dang!
буквально.
What the shit, mate?
It's the roadway to hell, actually. This is the one the Russians tell all the truckers to go on, and it's like the hell route.
I would hate to be on it.
Look at the guys running around for the trucks. Like, is there a disaster happening in front of us? It's like, yeah, what do you think you're on? Like a peaceful road? This isn't a country road.
Damn, bro, there's this giant plume of smoke in front of us about the half mile. Let me get on my truck to make sure it's a giant plume of smoke a half mile down the road, bleed.
Someone in the chat said, it'd be real nice if y'all quit yelling in your mic randomly. Some of us using headphones. Well, if you don't like it, turn off your station.
We've been doing this for 4.5 years. I mean,
At first I thought you was a nice guy, but now to see you're a hater.
Some of us wearing headphones. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Also, I'm not even yelling. If I was yelling, I'd get kicked out of my home if I was yelling.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, we would both get kicked out of places, you know, noise complaints and all. And also on top of that, I mean, like when we're making the noises into the headset, Matthew can hear me as loudly as you're hearing it in your headset, and he's not like, "Damn, you're too loud." So I mean, I don't know. Have you had your hearing checked lately? Is it too sensitive? But anyways, I'm just kidding with you there. I'm just playing with you, man. They're about to become a blood enemy. Like man, I hate them. I want them gone. I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm just playing with you. But still, I mean, I can't really do a lot about that. I'm sorry. We've tried to do that for 4.5 years. There's not a lot we can do. But moving us on out of all this news down in the southern front and on up to Kyiv, it's time for us to get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. So, without further ado,
Шановні
he's in the back rooms and he's giving speeches. So, without further ado, here's the speech. Peach!
Speech.
українці, українки, зараз ще тривають роботи в Одесі після удару у ніч на сьогодні. Були відключення електрики, води, всі служби задіяні, щоб відновити постачання. На ранок були відключення від електрики більше ніж 300 тисяч сімей в Одесі та області. На зараз третину вже заживили, роботи продовжуються. Я хочу подякувати усім ремонтним.
Also, by the way, I don't mean to pause this really quickly, but the subtitles for some reason on this are in Ukrainian. So let me switch that really quickly, folks, to English, so that way we can get the English one, because usually it defaults to English, but for some reason tonight, it did. Oh?
Can you translate it to Swahili?
Do they not have an English translated version?
They have to.
It doesn't look like it. Man, what am I supposed to do?
Should be at the very top.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I went down to the E's, and it wasn't even in the E's. Look, see, we're about to get to the E's again here. Really got the
Go to the top and see if it's up there.
Nope. See, Abkhazanian. You want that? You
Huh.
mean the listen to Abkhazanian? Let me see here, folks. Let me see. Hold up. Oh my God, they don't have English. Look, see, they have Esperanto, Estonian. Ew. And that's it.
If you put it in Swahili, I might be able to give you a translation.
You know what? I'm going to pick the closest language I can to English, which we're going to do Dutch. So I'm just going to continue it from here, folks. And we're just going to let the speech run in Dutch because that's about the closest to English we're going to get. So here it is.
ремонтним бригадам ДСНС України.
What the hell's the subtitles? Okay, here we. Okay, that's not even.
Honestly, it might be useless to play it if we can't even understand what he's saying.
All right, everyone. Well, Slava. And with that, that is unfortunately the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1628 of the war. And for some reason, folks, they did not have the English translated version. So we won't be able to play the speech for all of y'all tonight. But it is time for us, folks, to move on into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to so many of y'all who have been here tonight watching the stream. We had a peak viewership tonight of 18.4 thousand people. At least that's what YouTube is saying it is. It might be higher than that. We have no clue. They did that again yesterday. They said we had a peak viewership of 16.3. We actually had 17.1. So have no clue what's going on with that. We don't know if that's going on again today. So it might be a good bit higher than that even. We're just not sure. But beyond that, whether the number's accurate or not, we do thank each and every single one of y'all for being here and enjoying the show. And we're about to be moving on to the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And of course, it's going to be an absolute blast. We can talk about anything and everything except for religion, politics, climate change, whether the A-10's relevant to modern warfare or not, and if the Iranians should be nuked in certain circumstances. Outside of that, everything is on the table. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's time to go over something real quick. We've been holding back, but right now the fundraiser is at $3,242 raised, which is about 1,200 plus smackaroos above the original goal. And a huge shout out to the LSA once again for making that possible so early on in the stream, by the way. And a big shout to Give Up Now. He put in a $50 support to that fundraiser, by the way. A huge shout for the generosity, and that is truly remarkable to see that at such a good round number like that. Well over the goal, I must say. But Enforcer, what say you before we move into our questions?
And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to everybody who has been supporting this fundraiser tonight, big and small. Each and every single one of y'all have come together to make this total what it is. And it wouldn't have been possible without each and every single one of y'all. So a tremendous thanks to all of y'all so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, It is time for us, folks, to move on and into them questions.
Yes.
Take it away.
It is time. And our first super chat here, before we get to our live chat questions, is going to go to Ken Shearback. And thank you very much, Ken, for the $50 super chat. And we do appreciate that very much. He said, I see a lot of chat about the oil pipeline and should have been built years ago. And couldn't pipelines be bombed just as easily?
Yes, for the larger part, they could, because most pipelines are actually built above ground in some cases. Some of them can be buried underground for some reasons, but it usually is a lot easier for maintenance reasons and also original construction costs to build the pipelines where they're above ground. So you actually could hit them and knock them out, or you could hit the pumping facilities, which would also do a good bit of damage as well. And while it wouldn't require the oil to go directly through the strait, the Iranians could still hit it with some sort of a missile and generally knock out that form of distribution. So I hope that does answer that the best I can, and a humongous thanks to you for that incredible support on the Sunday night fundraiser to the channel and helping the channel to keep running. And I hope I addressed that quite well indeed. And with that, we're on the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, also, by the way, also real quick, I do want to settle a debate that I've been seeing in the chat amongst a lot of the chat members. An individual in the chat's arguing and saying until it's changed in Ukraine, he said he can say it's a wrong thing. Let's see, let me try to decipher what he's saying. He said without an election, Zelensky's a dictator, maybe a benevolent dictator, but still a dictator. That's not the case because Ukraine does not abide by U.S. constitutional laws. It does not, because they don't have that. Ukraine has their own constitution, and their constitution literally says that they can't hold elections during wartime. I know that sounds foreign to U.S. citizens, and I will say I don't necessarily agree with it. But then again, I'm not a Ukrainian citizen, so it's not really my concern. It's their country, it's their laws. So he's not a dictator. Like, that's a Russian propaganda narrative that's been put out there. Putin wants to say, oh, well, Zelensky's not the legitimate leader because I don't like him. It's like, well, that's not a legal argument. That's just somebody coming up with a propaganda narrative. So the folks in the chat there saying Zelensky is in there, rightfully so, and he was voted in and the Constitution tells him to stay in there, then they're correct. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree. And also I saw that they said that Americans have elections during war. If we can do it, then they can. But that's a false equivalence. Just because we do something one way in America doesn't mean everyone in the world has to do it our way. And that also doesn't mean that we have to do however we operate here in this country the way other people do it. That's kind of the beauty of a nation, is that we can do what we want and people in another country can do whatever they want, and they don't really have to listen to anyone because it's their own country and they have their own say. The Ukrainian Constitution was explicitly written that in wartime there can be no elections. That was not amended during the war. That was not a thing that just came into being right before the war in Ukraine. That has literally been in the Ukrainian Constitution since 1991, when the state of Ukraine in its modern form was founded. So it would be a little bit hard to say that he's a dictator because he's following well-founded traditional constitutional law in Ukraine that has been on the books since the very inception of the state of Ukraine in 1991. So I find the argument to be disingenuous generally.
Yeah, also, the individual said, I can think it's wrong and still support Ukraine and Zelensky. I mean, that's fair to think it's wrong. Like, me personally, I think Ukraine should have probably held elections by now. That's just my personal opinion. I've gotten flack for that in the past, by the way, but it seems like they should be able to hold elections. I know it would be extremely difficult, but the U.S. holds elections during wartime as well, and it's difficult then too. But then again, it's a little bit different. I mean, the U.S. truly hasn't had, like a full-on, full-scale siege on the country, trying to hold a war. I guess maybe during the Civil War, you could argue that. But it's not quite as severe, in my opinion, as what Ukraine's going through right now. But they could have probably held elections. But the problem is, there's a huge difference between calling Zelensky a dictator and saying that you don't agree with the way they're conducting their elections. Like, there's a huge difference. It's not fair to call him a dictator. He's not one. He's legally in power.
Yeah, that would kind of be like saying, because the current president's still the president, and he hasn't just declared a snap election outside of the Constitution of the United States, he's a dictator, or the prior president was a dictator, because they didn't just run an election every 4 months to see if people still liked him or not, regardless of the Constitution. And, and a lot of people would say, well, that's stupid. I bet you would probably say this, well, that's stupid. That's not the U.S. Constitution. Well, that's how the British Parliament runs. And the British Parliament can declare a snap election whenever they believe that their confidence is wavering, or the opposition can declare a snap election to see if they can end up snapping some seats up in Parliament. And it's like, well, if Britain can do that, and they can be that reactive to the public, why can't America? America is just supporting dictators at 4-year stints every single term. And it's like, we could make disingenuous arguments like that. And then I could also add after that to just kind of soften it. Well, I think the current president, the last president, all the presidents before him were dictators because they never held snap elections. But I still am a patriot of the United States. It's trying to make a false equivalence and then force U.S. legal standards and constitutional laws on other countries that are not beholden to U.S. constitutional standards, laws, or norms. So yeah, I don't really know where the equivalence would even come in to make an argument like that. At least from what I would see. And also,
Yeah.
I see they're adding. I mean, like, regardless of those statements, you could say that any elected representative that serves a tenure is a dictator after they're elected. Off of that argument, you could do that anywhere in the world. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
Our next super chat here goes to none other than Ross, all the way from Australia. And thank you very much, Ross, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that. He said last year, the president was busy reimagining the meaning of the word obliterate after Midnight Hammer failed to end the Iranian threat, and now there's talk of low-keying it with Iran. Excuse me. And he seems to be mincing words again, and it really means capitulation.
I would say that you're not really that far off. I would agree. It's kind of like getting towards surrender, capitulation, or something along those lines. Kind of just giving the Iranians whatever they want. And I'd have to say, I don't know about y'all. I have standards though when it comes to people. When people like kind of openly just sort of lie to your face all the time, like, last year when we bombed them, all their nuclear facilities are gone. And then this year we go to war with them because they're still weeks away, according to the government, from creating a nuclear weapon. And then throughout the whole war, every single statement between the strait is open and the strait is completely closed, but we're opening it, has come out. And every other statement has come out that we've won the war, we're winning the war, we've lost the war, we're accepting the Iranians' terms, we're not accepting the Iranians' terms. I find that kind of stuff to be very aggravating, especially because we have to cover it as a course of business with this being a news channel, that we have to cover every single thing every single day, and at this point, quite literally every day contradicts the last. And that sort of stuff gets incredibly annoying. So you could, like, honestly, at any point, you could say the president is saying this directly and he's saying something else, because quite literally every single time he says anything, he is. I mean, like, if he says the strait is open, what he's really saying is that it isn't open at all, and he just doesn't want to say that because that makes him look weak or something in his own head. And then if he says the strait is going to be open really soon, then he's just saying that for some other reason. Whatever he's saying is not what he's actually saying. It's always something else. And that just gets extremely annoying and just unbelievably frustrating. Because it's like, can't we just get a general statement? And I'm not saying, folks, that the president has to come out and be like, I suck, we lost. But something along the lines of, the strait isn't open, but we're still trying to get it open, and just keep on that line of statements. Like, just to work on that. Like, instead of having to say every single day, there's a deal coming tomorrow. It's like, why not just say something like, we're trying to work on it, we don't really have any progress yet, but we're going to keep working on a certain kind of a track and see if we get something. Why not? I mean, that's not lying, but that's also not saying that you completely lost and you suck, which I'm not expecting anyone in the government to ever say. So, like, why can't they just do that? I don't know. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $20 support from RCH Technologies, and thank you, good sir, as well, for the 20. He said, go, 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 LSA.
Hey, LSA, and I hope you're doing well once again, RCH Technologies, and a good thing to see you here tonight. I hope you've been doing quite well indeed, and I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Remed NYC, I think it is, or YYC, and we do appreciate that $20 support. And he said, Matt, thanks for fixing my account, and Scal, and question from the chat. And no problem, by the way. I don't know why it took so long for it to actually get unblocked. Because actually unblocked your account, like, I think it was yesterday or the day before that, actually. So I'm not sure why it took until today for it to actually get unblocked. But I'm glad it got fixed, though. And also thank you for that support. But Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you greatly for the support, and also a big congrats to Matthew for fixing that. Usually, actually, with the list of people that are banned on the live chat, usually the list is so long that you can't get to them. I think it's in the thousands, and it only shows you the first 400 in their
Thousands. It's more like the tens of thousands, I think.
Yeah. But it only shows us the first 400, actually. Like, you know that as well, man, because you'll scroll down through, like, the first 400, and then it won't load anymore. So it's very lucky that he was able to find it and unban it, actually, because usually,
There's a way
statistically.
around it.
Huh?
There's a way around it. I simply get people to send me their YouTube channel URL. I'll simply add it into the system as a preferred user, then I'll remove them as a preferred user, and it removes them from the banned list.
Oh yeah, I remember we figured out that workaround. I've completely forgot about that. That was a long time ago when we learned about that. I think that was like 2 years ago or so, I believe. So the man, no, quite well. Also, by the way, Matthew, not to get too much into some, but I sent off an email today for that coffee machine, and they sent me back an auto response that literally had nothing in it. So I don't really think there's a way to get that thing fixed. I'm gonna try it again, but that for some
Man,
reason that just reminded me of that.
persistence, email, call, and persistence.
Man, what are you?
Also, you got to get your warranty card out there too, and see where the email is for the warranty department.
Man, what? Oh well, man, I went and pulled up their website, and they had like email this for the warranty department. I did, and it gave me an auto reply with nothing in it. Man, but what are you, Ray Kroc? The number one thing is persistence. Like, the McDonald's founder.
You got to keep knocking on the door.
Man, that guy kept knocking on that door until he took a whole restaurant, bro. Like, it's like, damn, bro, that's persistence.
It's like, man, it's like also there's those people out there. It's like, don't take no for an answer, and then they get charged with harassment or something like that. And they're like, he definitely didn't take no for an answer. He's in jail now.
Man, I mean, it's like sometimes folks, no is a no, and it's like like if you're trying to sell something to someone, maybe no isn't the final answer. Maybe you can give them a pitch or be persistent enough that they'll eventually buy it. But if someone says no on other things, it's just a no. That's just how it is, sometimes.
No, man, they're just playing hard to get. That's all. Keep going.
You ain't got no road in it.
He ain't got no dumb truck.
Oh man, fertile stuff. But anyways, with that, we are on. Also, we got to get that one from the live chat. So what do we got from the live chat, Matthew?
And the one from the live chat goes to Trigger, who said, any word about Russian farmers leaving the crops in the field or found fuel to take the crops out?
So actually, we've been getting word on that intermittently. I think the last report we got on that was a week ago. And the report from a week ago was something along the lines of farmers are literally having to like do a fuel sharing co-op at this point to try and get the gas around to harvest some fields. And even then, most of them aren't being harvested. Most of the crops are rotting out in the field right now. So the harvest is already failing at this point right now in the late summer. And it probably will only get worse when the fall comes around because we're not expecting the fuel crisis to get any better in the country. So I hope that answers that the best we can. And a humongous thanks to your response right now, live chat, and help with this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here two from RCH Technologies once again. He said, we smacked the goal before the national anthem.
And I gotta say, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, that's nuts. I didn't expect that tonight, and we did it. We did it. We hit $1,000 raised. We actually hit the fundraiser goal before we even went on air. Way back in the day, folks, when the war in Ukraine was fresh and people were really big into supporting Ukraine, I think our usual goal was to hit over $1,000 raised before the intro ended. And the intro was even longer back then. It's like 14 minutes or so. Nowadays, it's about 8. And nowadays, like tonight, we hit over the whole fundraiser goal before the stream went live. That's absolutely crazy. And I got to thank you greatly for that support once again, RCH. And I do have to say, truly impeccable work by the Lee Spring Army tonight. And so with that, it is now time for us to get on into the live chat questions and the Morse code decoders. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have the whole roster of Morse code decoders. We have Paul, Kevin, Mason. Excuse me, folks. I don't know what's got me going. I got to get some water here in a second. But we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Loviness, Coach, Jerry, Sire, and Brian. And thank y'all for solving the Morse. They said the Morse code message said Iran is just trying to fleece and play the U.S. at this point. And boy, what a shame. LLT, LSA, and also stall, please.
And that is dead on the nail. That's the sound of money, or the sound of miner's lung, whichever. And y'all got that down on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And I gotta say, a humongous congrats to everybody in the Lee Springer Sentinel Corps for getting that correct time and time again. Truly something impeccable there. Something incredible to know that so many people are working on to know what that Moscow message is, and they get it right all the time. Truly incredible. Truly profound. It's got us all choking up over here with how amazing and incredible it is. The Lee Springer Sentinel Corps
It's
was able
great.
to do that. Incredible work.
It's great, really. It's fantastic.
And so, on that note, let's get it. What do we got?
And also, by the way, someone said in the chat, is there an email I can send to get my account unbanned? I can actually see you, by the way, so you're definitely not banned. I can see you in the chat right there. So you're probably good, I would imagine. But we do have our first live chat question here, which goes to none other than Kevin, who said, why doesn't the countries whose ships Iran strikes do anything, nor say anything about it? And thanks for being better than the mainstream media.
That's a great question. I don't know why they don't do anything. That's a mystery to me, you know? Because you would think that a lot of really, honestly, the truth is that a lot of the countries that these vessels are flagged out of aren't even the countries that really run the vessel. In the modern day, there's a very big concept behind this maritime idea of a flag of convenience. And so a ship that is actually generally owned and operated by the British, or the Germans say, could be flagged out of Panama, because Panama has laws that are extremely lax when it comes to operating ships in international waters or registered to their country. And also on top of that, the labor laws in Panama and some countries like that allow for wages to be extremely low on these ships, meaning that they can operate them for basically pennies to the dollar compared to what a crew that would actually be operating out of Britain or Germany would be able to run the ship for. And so if a ship that's flagged out of Panama goes through the Strait of Hormuz and it gets hit and heavily damaged, Panama really actually has no stake in that vessel rather than the vessel being registered in Panama and flagged out of Panama. If anyone really has a stake in it, it's a British company and British subjects that would have the real stake in the ship because they own the ship but flag it and operate it out of Panama. And that then creates a jurisdictional issue because technically it's a Panamanian ship, so Panama is really the only one that has a sovereign right to respond. But the ship is owned by Britain, so Britain could try to respond, but it wouldn't actually have a sovereign claim over the vessel because the vessel is not flagged out of the United Kingdom. And that's generally, I think, my best answer as to why nobody really does anything about it is because of the flag of convenience world that we live in. It makes it very hard for the countries that these ships are flagged out of to respond because they really don't have an ability to respond, and the countries that actually operate the ships don't have a national or sovereign claim to the vessel anymore because of the flag of convenience, and so then they really can't respond either. So that would be my best guess answer that I could give off the top of my head. I might be wrong on that, so take that with a grain of salt, but that's what I'm thinking right now is my running theory. But with that, I hope that does address that quite well, and with that, we're on to next one.
We also have a question from Womble, who said the missile situation Ukraine out USA running low. Is Israel with USA backing them? And please explain.
Do you understand what that question means?
So I think he's asking here, is Israel going to help out Ukraine since the USA is running low on missiles? Is Israel somehow going to try to fill the shortage?
Oh, hell no. Israel doesn't help anybody. Like, if they get what's theirs, they get what's mine's, and that's it. They don't help anybody at all.
I think they also blocked the Iron Dome from going to
Yeah.
Ukraine too. I think I heard about that. They were like, no Iron Dome either. It's like, damn, that's pretty selfish. For a country that receives so much help from everybody else, they're very selfish with other people.
Man, remember earlier on in the war when they said, we're retiring our patriots, and Zelensky said, oh, great, then you can give it to us, right? No, we're burying them in the desert, F you. Like, it's like, what the hell's wrong with these people? It's like, what's wrong with it, like, the Israeli government? It's like, what the hell makes them where they won't give shit to anybody? And I mean, they've given basically nothing to Ukraine. I think they gave them some helmets at some point, like 10,000 helmets, and I think 50 or so armored cars. And that's all that Israel's ever given through the whole war in Ukraine. So, you know, I would say, is Israel going to fill in the gap? Hell no. I mean, they won't fill in the gap for nobody. I mean, if the U.S. was in a lurch, and this is also why, folks, I'm a big proponent these days of the Israelis are an ally of convenience in the Middle East and nothing more. They're nothing close to being a great ally at all. Because if the U.S. was in a lurch and we needed their help, they wouldn't help. Like that's just the honest truth of it. They are more than happy to receive help, but as far as their national position goes, they are hyper nationalist as a government, and that means that they're only going to look out for their interest. And as long as you're benefiting them, it's great. But once you become a liability, you're completely cut out of the equation. So with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a question from Maurice Sparks, who said, "Do you think what's going on with Yemen and Saudi being attacked by the Houthis make that whole area break out into a full-fledged war?"
Like as far as like that could turn into a full-fledged war, or as like an extension of the Iran conflict, it makes it a full-fledged war. Because I could see it either way. And I would say, as far as the Houthi situation with Saudi Arabia, if we're talking about that as a bubble sort of an incident, like a focalized deal, it's not really a full-fledged war yet. It's a skirmish, or well, not really a skirmish because that's basically a war. I would say that it's a low-intensity war, nothing that's incredibly big yet. But if we're talking about it being attached with the Iran war situation, then yes, that is definitely an extension into a full-blown regional war, literally from end to end of the Middle East for the larger part. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a question here from Justin, who said, "I wonder why the U.S. and Israel did not wipe out Iran's East Coast defenses at the same time they were hitting them. And what say you guys?"
It's because originally they expected that Iran would collapse in about 3 days. The old classic, we're going to be in Kyiv in 3 days concept. The U.S. Government and apparently the president believed in that one pretty heavily, and apparently the Israelis also did as well. Because when they hit Iran, and also by the way, folks, I have to cite a specific statement here, because I don't want to have to say allegedly, so I have to give you all the specific statement. There was a recording of the president in front of a press pool where they asked him about the situation with the British, and this was way back like 6 months ago. Well, not really 6 months ago. This was actually during the interim period during the MOU. And the press had asked about the situation with the British, and the president said along the lines that he had called up the British, he had called up the Prime Minister of Britain, Keir Starmer, and asked him to get involved in the conflict. And Keir Starmer said that they couldn't get involved in the conflict yet because he would have to go and consult his cabinet. And so they might be able to get involved maybe a half week into the war or a full week into the war, but they wouldn't be there on day one. And the president said, look, I got to have something now, and you got to be in this or not right now because this thing's going to be over in a half a week to a week. And so generally the concept apparently was in the war plan that once they killed Ali Khamenei, the entire Iranian government would implode and the war would end in a couple of days. In reality, they killed Ali Khamenei, and because they have a very solidified bureaucratic structure to the Islamic regime, they immediately promoted someone to take his place, and most of the armed forces of the IRGC and the Iranian Islamic Republic operated autonomously until they got a new leader and a new government formed, and then the situation largely just carried on as if Ali Khamenei was still alive and operating the country single-handedly. So that generally is the reason why they didn't really go after anything on the coast, is because they didn't think it was going to be a problem. Like, think about it this way, because this is how the war plan went. Why try and break a blockade or stop a blockade on forming on the Strait of Hormuz when you expect the war to end so quickly they can't even blockade the strait? That was their thinking at the start, which is an absolutely asinine and stupid sort of a thinking. It's like, why in the world would we ever expect a war to go on the most optimistic timetable of literally just 3 days or less? It's like that never happens historically. I mean, in like very few instances in history has that ever happened, and it usually has happened in instances where like the British went to war with like an African warlord or something like that in the late 1800s, and he surrendered in 30 minutes. It's like that normally never happens. So why in the world would we expect it to happen here? And they did, and that's why we're in the situation we're in now, is because they planned for a short war and we got a long war, and that took them completely by surprise. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from what I know. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lupi Lendo, who said, "What do you guys think will be the long-term effects from all the military leadership being removed, combined with the might makes right overall attitude that the U.S. is currently following?" And if you believe the reports, I mean, I've heard rumors that some of these people are being removed because they simply have mere disagreements with leadership. That's the allegations I've heard so far. Some people are saying there might be a material reason they're getting removed, but the catch is they're not saying that in the public. They're not stating a public reason for why they're removing all these different military leaders like that. So just knowing how things operate, I would tend to believe, in my personal opinion, that it seems like they're likely being removed because they're simply disagreeing with leadership. That seems to be my personal opinion of my best guess of why they're being removed, but I don't know that for a fact, obviously. But um, if that's the reason why they're being removed, I would say it's definitely not a good reason to remove the military leaders. Definitely not. I mean, if the goal is to get a whole bunch of yes men in there, usually yes men are not the brightest. I'll be completely honest. Usually they're not very intelligent, and the fact that they're a yes man means they'll do anything it takes to keep their job, even if it means doing something stupid. And I wouldn't say that's a very smart position to take. So if that's the case, then we're not in a good shape. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree with that generally. If I had to give my personal opinion of why I think a lot of these commanders are being removed, it's because they aren't getting along with the current administration in some way, shape, or form, and the civilian officials that also operate the federal agencies as an extension of the current administration. That's generally what we've seen in a lot of cases, not only in the military, but throughout the rest of the government agencies that exist here in the United States, is that if a government agency, even in just its existence, kind of goes against the current grain, then it'll be completely destroyed. Case in point, the Forestry Service, which literally got axed down to basically nothing and completely defunded because it's not really going in the current prerogative of the current administration's mindset and goals. So instead of just trying to, sideline the Forestry Service, they literally obliterated the entire system. So that's kind of the same thing I think is going on with the military, in my opinion, is that if a general says something like, I think that's stupid, or I disagree because that's not a wise idea because of A, B, and C, or we might want to do this instead because of these reasons, that is enough reason to say that they are too free thinking of their own and to have them removed. That's at least my opinion. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Catalyst Destiny. He said, "Do you think Saudi Arabia will learn a lesson from this? That trying to form allies with countries like Pakistan and Turkey is a laughable joke, and maybe ally with nations with decency." And I'll be honest, I don't even think Saudi Arabia thought they were going to get anything out of that. I really don't. There was some other political reason they signed that. I don't think they actually intended to actually follow through on it because, like I was saying before, Pakistan, for the U.S. and the West to act like Pakistan is like on our side is absolutely absurd. Like it's really absurd as hell because they were harboring terrorists for a long time, and I would argue they probably still are to a large degree. And when I say harboring, it's not like they're actively giving them a house to live in, but they're simply letting them exist there, and they're not hunting them down. That's what I mean by that. Pakistan is not our friend. I don't know why the U.S. keeps acting like that. They're definitely not. So they're not going to act against Iran because they have like some weird dual allegiances going on with the Iranians in the West. Turkey, Turkey is not going to help either for the most part. They're not going to get involved in that mess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm still holding out on them. I'm not saying that they're going to be wildly effective, but they're going to be like a super pact or something in the region. I'm not saying that. But one thing I am saying, though, is that the defensive pact is so new. It's only 48 hours old. They might be tested at some point in the future, and maybe they'll react, and maybe they'll react in a way that shocks us all, or maybe they'll react in the way that Matthew's expecting. Honestly, I'm kind of expecting, which is that none of them work in a concerted way, and they do absolutely nothing. So I would say I'm still going to hold out judgment on them until we have enough to work off of to really give a proper judgment. Because so far, with what I'm working off of, Saudi Arabia hasn't tagged anyone in, and none of the other countries have tagged any of the other countries in the pact in on any situation that they're dealing with where they're under attack. And generally, how defensive pacts work. If you don't believe me, folks, defensive pacts work this way because they just do. Like I could pull. I'm trying to think what historical example could I pull up? All of them. For example, 9/11. That took the United States invoking Article 5 for everyone to go over to Afghanistan with us in the war on terror and also Iraq as well. But you have to tag people in a defensive pact to get them involved. That's even how it's reflected in video games. And if you ever play a game like Hearts of Iron 4 or Victoria 3, which are generally basically just nation management games, if you want an ally to join in a conflict that you have a defensive pact in with, you can't just expect them to show up. You have to actively tag them in and invoke them to join you in the conflict because that's historically how defensive pacts function.
Yeah, but here's the problem though. Even if they invoke it, like even if that's the case, which I would argue they've already like pretty much met the requirements for the defense situation to be met. But even if they tell Pakistan, hey, look, we're tagging you in, let's help. You really think that Pakistan is going to start providing weapons for Saudi Arabia to attack Iran or attack the Houthi forces, which are Iranian forces essentially through a proxy? They're not going to do that. So the same reason Pakistan generally hasn't acted against Iran as a whole, they're buddies with them. They're not going to do anything to mess up their relationship with their buddies inside of Iran.
But didn't you also say that about the Pakistan and the Taliban many years ago, and then the Pakistanis went to war with them because of border concerns, because they're all
I don't think
Muslims.
so.
So I think you did because I was like, well, Pakistan doesn't really like them too much. You're like, no, 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 they're all Islamic, they all get along, and I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, that might not pan out to be the case. And then Pakistan invaded them because of the whole situation with the Balochistanis. So I mean, it's not out of the question. Like generally the Pakistanis have shown they don't really care what ideology or what group or what nation it even is. If they go against them, they'll go to war with them. So I would say generally, with Iran, that might be a similar situation. Like they might have tried to play mediator now, but we also have to remember, Matthew, that the U.S. tried to play mediator to some extent in the First World War before we got involved in 1917. And so if people say, just because someone's playing mediator now, they're not going to try and go to war with Germany because America's like a brotherly nation to them and all that. It's like, well, who knows? It's like, if they go against the interest of the United States of America, we'll go to war with them. And I think that might be what Pakistan would end up doing, is that if it ends up getting serious enough, then the Pakistanis might get involved against Iran. But that's only if Saudi Arabia tags them in. And I think also on top of that, one thing that I haven't added in is that they're definitely going to talk about it before they do anything officially. Like they're going to call up Pakistan and Turkey and be like, would y'all get tagged in? Because we don't want to try and invoke this defensive pact and then both of y'all don't want to get tagged in and then y'all think it's completely pointless and don't get involved. That'll make the whole thing look weak. Because, like right now, yes, the criteria has been met with the Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia, but has Saudi Arabia officially invoked anyone to get involved in the defensive pact charter? And the answer is no. And so there isn't like I would say that is the defining moment. If any of these like pact members declare the invocations of the defensive pact and no one responds, the whole thing's completely pointless. But no one's done that yet for us to even know whether it's worth its salt or not yet, at least in my opinion.
We'll see, but Pakistan is not going to do anything. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
Man, I mean, man, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I mean, they did a lot against India and they did a lot against Afghanistan. Well, India's kind
That's
of
different.
India's
That's a
expected.
lot different. That's like apples to oranges. They've been fighting with India for ages, and they have border disputes with them and stuff. And also, that's not the same. That's not the same. Iran and Pakistan's a whole different relationship than Iran and Pakistan and India. That's a massively different relationship for many different various reasons. So nah,
Well, I mean, I don't mean to keep this going a little bit longer, but I
we
mean,
got to move on though. We got to
India,
move on.
India's a nuclear armed country, though. Wouldn't you say that's quite a difference?
Yeah, but it's different. There's a lot of like racial hatred between those countries. It's not the same thing with Iran.
Well, maybe. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Ross, all the way from Australia once again. And thank you very much, Ross, for that super chat. We do appreciate that very, very much once more. Very generous of you. He said,
Hey!
sir, the shareholders of Big Oil are asking how you do it. Amazing. Thanks for the windfall profits. They say, so unexpected when you control the mightiest armed forces on the planet. He said, sir, mightiest, the mightier than the sword. Sir, so mighty. Really, really something. How much longer can we drag this out and keep the dollars rolling in? That's what they say, sir. That's not really what they're saying. I don't know what they're saying, sir.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't know either. Honestly, I would think that some of them might not be liking this all too much because while the prices are going up, everything's becoming more difficult to work with. Not great. But that's at least my 2 cents, and I could be wrong, but a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, Ross, because if it wasn't for great folks like you, none of this would be possible. It really wouldn't be. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Joppy, who said if the U.S. abandons East Asia for China to take during the Taiwan War, DPRK uses meat waves on South Korea and literally destroys Japan with nukes since they can't invade and abandons. That's an apocalyptic scenario right there, Joppy. That's a very apocalyptic.
I don't think they'd ever nuke Japan. like just like literally glass them. I don't think they'd ever do that, because that wouldn't really be in the interest of North Korea. And also at that point, the U.S. is going to be there in some limited extent. They are probably going to end up nuking North Korea as a result, because we're never going to completely abandon and just literally wipe Indo-PACOM off of the map. So me personally, like, also on top of that, I don't think that North Korea is ever going to invade South Korea either, because while we might abandon Taiwan, that doesn't mean that we have to pull the Eighth Army out of South Korea, and that also doesn't mean that we have to abandon Japan as well, just in like one large chunk. We can just abandon Taiwan and just keep our interest in South Korea and Japan intact. So I would say that probably would be an unlikely scenario, in my opinion. But if that did happen, that would be pretty unfortunate. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
This one goes to Catalyst Destiny, who said, here's a better question. So where are their defensive agreement allies, Pakistan and Turkey, and where is a statement from either damning Iran, and where's the retaliation against Iran? And also to address this one really quick, I don't want to get into a huge rabbit hole on this one again, but I would agree with you. Like, where is any of that? But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say we have to give them time. I think it's going to take an actual invocation of the pact to see if it actually works or not. And that hasn't happened yet, so I'm still holding out any judgment. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm also not saying it's going to fail either. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's also why I'm countering Matthew when he's like, it's failed from the outset. I'm like, well, I don't know. We haven't seen it actually work yet, so it could go either way. And I like to withhold judgment on that sort of thing until we get some running track records to get and work off of. But anyways, with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
We have a one from Avari Mandabratis. He said, are Iranian tugboats recovering foreign ships they attacked that were left adrift, confiscating both the ship and the cargo?
I haven't heard of that, actually. I wouldn't know. I think most of them are just kind of adrift, kind of floating around out there. The last I heard, I actually don't know what the recovery process looks like at all. So unfortunately, I think I have to declare ignorance on that. But I hope that addresses that, or my lack of an address, the best I can. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Avari Mandabratis. He said, why isn't the USA going after Iran's money, whether cash, gold, or in some foreign bank? And why have a cyber warfare capability if you're not going after the adversary's money? Now, that's interesting, Avari, because it hasn't been widely reported, but I'm of the strong belief, and also have a good lead for a rumor, that Iran's been given cyber attacking the United States infrastructure wildly, like over the past week. You might notice there's been some cell outages, like from time to time, and there's been other stuff, like for example, the water places around the country in different cities having hacks taking place. I think all that's Iranian. That's what I personally think. That's my rumor or my hunch about that. I think the Iranians have been attacking quite heavily, and I would imagine the U.S. has probably been doing the exact same to Iran. But that stuff's not widely reported on, because it's very clandestine for the most part. And also, that generally would panic the public if they were very vocal about that. But that's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally say the same thing myself, because I don't really know a lot about the cyber warfare side of things. That's largely outside of my forte. I should really get involved and interested in that, because that's a big part of modern warfare, but unfortunately, it just never has been my thing. But with that,
Did you know that Iran has one of the most capable cyber attack units on the planet, actually? You wouldn't think that, but they actually do.
weirdly enough, most of our adversaries do, like the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians. Most of everything else, like in Iran and Russia, their actual military sucks, but their cyber warfare stuff is actually pretty top notch.
Yeah, I don't understand how that is. I don't know if China's like helping them train their cyber, attack people. I don't know really what they call the unit that specifically in Iran, but they're like offensive cyber capability units. I don't know if China's training those people or who is, but it's like that's very in-depth technical knowledge they're using to attack our systems. Granted, we have some lazy folks in the United States which aren't properly protecting their cyber systems. Like for example, using default passwords like password 12345. Like it makes it pretty easy to hack in. But it still takes knowledge to be able to even get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sort of thing. You know what's even crazier is that North Korea actually has a very active cyber division in their armed forces in the KPA. But they do everything. I mean, they even do like the little employment scams. You know the ones I'm talking about, Matthew, where they get like an American to take a job and then they send them like 100 laptops and they operate all the laptops remotely in their house for like years. Like that's happened a couple of times here in the States. But beyond that, though, to round out that question, it is a very fascinating thing, the cyber warfare side of stuff these days. But on that note, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream, and I gotta say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of each and every single one of y'all watching tonight, because we are, of course, rounding this thing on out finally for the night at 3 hours in. 3 hours at the top of the hour since the stream started. And I got to give a humongous shout out to the Spring Army for raising a whopping $3.2 thousand out of the $2,000 fundraising goal that we had tonight. And I also got to give a humongous shout out to about the 18.3 thousand people that we know of that are here, and the 120,000 people that have watched this stream before the show ended for the night. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. Oh! And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the 120,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. And we'll see you all on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover the rest of the news for Monday and Tuesday, that is. We'll have a lot to cover on Tuesday, I'm sure. And also maybe a short war video out tomorrow. And I know a lot of people have been saying, Enforcers, what happened to the short war videos? They hadn't been out for like 5 days, 6 days or something like that. There just hadn't been enough news midday to cover to put those out. We're going through another drought of news midday. That's why we don't have those out over the last 5 or 6 days. So we hope to be able to get back to that eventually. I'm sure the news will pick up very soon, so we'll probably have the chance to make more short war videos about that. But generally, if we don't have it midday, we have to wait to cover it on the stream for the most part. So hopefully we can get back to it. But in the meantime, though, a huge shout out to you all for helping us to reach a massive amount in the fundraiser and making that another big success on tonight, another Sunday for the stream. And we hope to see you all on Tuesday night once again. But of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Spring on me,